So today we have Mayor Jordan, we have City Council members, Sonia Gutierrez, Sarah Marsh, Mark Kenyon, Matthew Petty, Sloan Scroggin, Sarah Bunch, Teresa Turk, and Kyle Smith. We have Wade Abernathy, Bond Projects Manager, Chris Brown, City Engineer, Jonathan Kurth, Planning Director, Garner Stoll, Development Services Director, Police Chief Mike Reynolds, Assistant Police Chief Jamie Fields, Lieutenant Doug Pope, Fire Chief Brad Harden, Hal Sargent, Architect, Audie Lack, Architect, Anthony Sumlin, Community at Large, Rochelle Augustine, Community at Large, Chris Brackett from Olson, Brad Hammond from Olson, John Newman, Executive Director of Lifestyles, Jennifer Fairchild, Assistant Principal at Asbell School, Ben Cameron, Associate Student Government Vice President at the University of Arkansas, and Antoine Dehone from BSW Architects.
Outstanding, quite the group.
Yeah.
This may be my, this may break a record for me as far as how many people are in one Zoom room at a time. I appreciate everyone being here. Mayor Jordan, if you want to kick us off with some opening comments, the floor is yours.
Sure, love to. I want to welcome everyone, and I'm really excited that we could all join today to work together on moving this Fayetteville Police Headquarters project forward. As council members who worked on the 2019 bond projects as a whole, I know that we're all proud of the public support for this long-awaited headquarters building. 71% support from the community. Today, we're coming together to bring mutual understanding of the intent and design of the headquarters campus, to determine common goals and to arrive at a consensus and support to move forward on the project. I want to thank you all for your time and for your thoughtful participation today. I also want to thank Chief Reynolds and his team, Chief Harden and his team, Wade Abernathy for his bond project management, Chris and his team for the transportation bond project that has become intertwined with this, and the architects and engineers who have worked on this project to date. And finally, we are very appreciative of our partnership with the Urban Land Institute, Northwest Arkansas, for pulling this workshop together. With that, I will turn the meeting over to Wes Craiglow, Northwest Arkansas Coordinator of the Urban Land Institute, to introduce his team and format and goals for this meeting. Wes, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to be here. We certainly are appreciative of the opportunity to support your effort here in achieving a design consensus on this important project, once in a generation project, in fact. Good morning, everyone. I am Wes Craiglow, as the mayor mentioned, the coordinator for the Urban Land Institute here in Northwest Arkansas. Before I introduce my team, I would like to introduce you all a little bit more to the Urban Land Institute for those of you all for whom this is our first interaction. ULI was established in 1936, and we are the oldest and largest network of real estate and land use experts in the world. The Institute has long been recognized as one of the most respected sources of objective information on urban planning, growth, and development, thanks in large part to our members' knowledge, experience, and active involvement in the organization and their communities. I know we have a few ULI members in the room today, and we certainly appreciate their voice and leadership on this important issue. Our lead facilitator today is Amy Robinson. Amy is a certified facilitator in Appreciative Inquiry, which is a change management approach that focuses on identifying what is working well, analyze why it is working, and then doing more of it. Amy's expertise has contributed to efforts with the City of Fayetteville, Fayetteville A&P Commission, Fayetteville Public Library, the Arkansas Arts Council, the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business, the Arkansas Public Policy Panel, and more. Janelle Holman is the owner of the Giovanna Group Strategic Consultants. Janelle is committed to increasing the institutional capacity of nonprofit organizations and corporations through interactive facilitation, comprehensive community-based initiatives, resource development, and strategic planning and implementation. Ryan Hale is the founder of Lane Shift, an education and consulting agency that exists to create bicycle and pedestrian networks that move people safely and comfortably. Ryan spent over 5 years helping plan and grow Northwest Arkansas's extensive network of bike and pedestrian infrastructure and played an instrumental role in shepherding these projects to completion. Jen Cousins is an Arkansas native and the owner of Clara Leone, an events and production agency. She holds a BA in drama and a master's in design, and she has been working with nonprofits and small businesses for over 20 years. Jen keeps our team organized and on track and will ensure these meetings are as productive as possible. And finally, as for me, I served as Deputy Director of Planning and Development in the city of Conway. During that time, I played an active role in numerous municipal projects, including a police headquarters for Conway, several fire stations, regional parks facilities, and the relocation of the city's airport. So that is our team. Let me introduce a few Zoom rules for the meeting, and then I'll pass it over to Amy to kick us off. These rules are rule number 1, and this is the most important. Everyone participates. It's a big room, obviously. We will find ways to break us down into smaller cohorts, but it is critical that everybody gets their voice heard today. Probably the most important rule. We would like everyone to keep your video on. We feel like keeping your video on throughout this meeting adds a level of warmth and depth and interpersonal connection that's simply not possible while we're all looking at idle headshots. We will take 2 breaks during this session. We have worked those in. There are going to be about 10 minutes each based on how we use this clock, but we wanted to give a chance for everybody to catch a breath and get up and stretch those legs. We do ask you to keep mute on except when you're speaking. It's just important to make sure that we filter out any background noise and that we can all clearly hear the person speaking at every moment. If you need to interrupt, which we encourage some dialogue, we recognize the value in keeping this as conversational as possible, and those polite and professional interruptions are sometimes necessary to keep the conversation going. If you would like to do so, please just raise your hand. There's a Zoom function at the bottom of the screen. You're welcome to turn your mic on, raise your hand, and our facilitators will get the conversation steered your way as soon as possible. And finally, you are welcome to use chat as you see necessary, whether you're contributing to specific parts of the conversation here today, or you just want to make an admin note to somebody else on the team. We definitely encourage chat. Recognize that we've requested the city Zoom administrator to turn private chat off. That's for 2 reasons. 1, we think it's important that everybody be heard publicly in an open forum like this, but also for FOI rules that we all know we have to follow. So those cover our technical Zoom rules for today, and hopefully introduce you to a little bit more about us. And I will pass it over to Amy now to kick us off with facilitation. Amy, you're up.
Thank you so much, Wes. Pages and pages of people, that's what this is. Like scrolling through and there's people and faces and wonderful. So thank you very much for keeping your video on. As Wes mentioned, it does help us as facilitators also to see you, you know, when you do turn your mute off, we see that your little screen lights up and some of those things. So earlier on, somebody mentioned, I think it was Hal, he was like, this is weird. This is weird. But we are hoping to make this as normal and most importantly, as productive as possible. It does seem like 3 hours is going to, is a long time, but I promise that today it will fly by. So the process may be familiar to some of you. As Wes mentioned, Appreciative Inquiry is the overarching process that we're using. It was used during the Fayetteville Forward Summit, and it brought engagement and ideas about economic development to the city, to the forefront. There is an example of the process here. We have defined the affirmative topic as how do we design the best Fayetteville Police Department headquarters for the city, for the police and community. So that is the affirmative topic that we worked with. Many of you were able to participate in a process of discovery interviews, which gave us a strong starting place. And we will review those shortly and continue the process before going into the dream phase. But the entire day is focused on the first 2 phases, discover and dream. So we will review the plan, we'll give you a discovery summary, we will develop a purpose statement, we will go into the dream phase, and then we'll step lightly into the design phase, which is what we will be covering in the following August 3rd session, discover and deliver. So that is a basic overview of our day. And so again, I did see a chat, just making sure that it's, so we are, again, use your chat, keep on, the other rule of rules of engagement. I want to make sure that everybody, I'm not going to do the next slide, Jen, if you don't mind. So the other thing that we're going to go over are what we're calling rules of engagement. Zoom is not the only rule of engagement that we have. In order to move forward together in anything, we need to have an appreciation of one another, appreciative, and ask good questions, inquiry. So we'll accomplish this with a couple of simple rules of engagement. Respect perspectives. That simply means share yours and respect others. Simply recognize that your perspective is not the only one. Then forward phrasing is the other very, very important thing that we'll go through today. Some of these are life skills, for lack of a better term. Turn comments and statements into questions. So if you have something that you very strongly want to state, that you want to put forward, turn it into a question and help us move the conversation forward. The other life skill, and being the mother of children, this is one that I try to practice at home, is replace but with and. It is amazing what that will do to help move the conversation forward. And we will help you do that today. So, Jen, we can move on to the, so now we're going to turn it over to, we're going to look at everyone in the room and recognize again, thank you for the roll call at the beginning of this, Susan. We have representatives from the City of Fayetteville, City Council members, the Fayetteville Police Department, the Fayetteville Fire Department, engineers, architects, and very valuably from our community. And I will mention right here, Ben, I don't know, Elizabeth, if you are out there, our University of Arkansas student is being a stand-in with Elizabeth. So thank you all very much. And I'd love to now turn it over to our Chief of Police, who is going to kick us off in our understanding of where the project is and how we got here.
Well, Amy, good morning, and thank you so much. I appreciate that. So first of all, I want to take an opportunity to thank all of our workshop members for their willingness to participate in these important site plan and building design discussions. Your input is certainly critical to the overall success of this project. Second, I want to thank my team, Deputy Chief Jamie Fields, who's joining us today, along with Lieutenant Doug Pope. They've been working diligently on this project for the past 2.5 years. So together, we've attended courses on planning, designing, and constructing police facilities. We've conducted a lot of site visits. We've attended ward meetings, community meetings, and we've worked diligently with our architects on space needs, conceptual design, site plan, schematic design to get to this point of the project. I do want to take a couple of minutes just to provide some historical information and also provide a timeline of our police building project. So those of you who are joining us and are not familiar, we moved into our current facility in July of 1993. Some of you that have been around Fayetteville for a long time will know that this building was a J.C. Penney automotive type building, and it was remodeled in 1993 for both the police and the district court offices. So at that time, we moved from 8,600 square feet into this building, which provided us, the police department, with just a little bit over 22,000 square feet. And in 1993, the Fayetteville Police Department had 95 employees, and I believe we served a community population of approximately 45,000. The newly renovated police building did lack adequate men's locker room space, and the only reason I know that is because I was hired in July of 1993, actually July 26th, so 2 more days I'll have 27 years in. But anyway, I moved in on that day, and I was excited, and I tell this story a lot. I was given all of my police equipment and walked past the men's locker room downstairs into the employee hallway, and there my locker was. So I was kind of surprised that we had just renovated this police department, and it looked like we were about 10 to 15 lockers, if I remember correctly, short of where we needed to be back in 1993 with just 95 employees. And today we currently have 180 employees here at the police department. So over the past 27 years, we've simply outgrown our police headquarters building as both our population and as I mentioned, our workforce has doubled. And I just want to share a couple of examples with everyone on some issues that we highlighted during the bond initiative. These aren't all inclusive, but just some I wanted to point out. The women's locker room today is beyond capacity, and we don't have any room for expansion. We currently have 10 lockers, and we have 13 female officers, and I hope to hire more real soon. The men's locker room is beyond capacity, as I mentioned. There's no room for expansion. We were able to expand in 2010 to get 114 lockers in the men's locker room, and currently have 117 male officers. There's limited public handicap accessibility as well. The only elevator at the police department is a freight elevator. So visitors must be escorted through the length of the building on the first floor as they enter the police department in order to access that freight elevator. And then they're escorted back to the far end of the second floor to access administration or the limited seating area in the officer's briefing room or for community events. And I believe Councilmember Scroggin is with us today, and he'll remember that from his attendance at the Citizens Police Academy. There's also no public restrooms on the second floor, and visitors, sex offenders, suspects, prisoners, crime victims routinely have to share the same lobby and waiting area. We do not have really any hardened security to protect our employees or our resources from threats. Of course, tragically, that was most evident on December 7th of this past year. And the last thing I just wanted to point out is our range. So our current Fpd Firing Range was built on the old water treatment facility on southeast Fayetteville in the early 1960s. The range does flood when there's heavy rains, making that range unusable for a number of days. And there have been some safety concerns raised by the public, and I'm sure some of our council members, constituents have raised those concerns with them, including noise and projectile concerns, along with the concerns about the potential for lead contamination in the soil and the White River. So you might recall back in 2005, Wilson Estes Police Architects completed the first facilities needs assessment that I'm familiar with, recommending that the city build approximate 64,000 square foot police department. At that time, the police department had 154 employees, and I believe the population was around 72,000. Wilson Estes estimated this building would meet the PD's growth for the next 20 years. However, unfortunately, the police department was not constructed. There was just not a funding source that was identified at that time. If you'll remember, that was when the district courts and the city prosecutor's office were constructed, and they were the only facilities that received funding as a result of that Wilson Estes space needs study. So in 2018, we'll move forward a little bit more in the modern times. The city council approved the Dewberry Architects out of Chicago to review and refresh that 2005 Wilson Estes study for the police department. This study documented that the current police department and dispatch facilities were undersized with inadequate staff and public parking. The existing facilities were outdated with aged building systems, and the police department lacked safety and security measures to protect both of our employees and our community, our visitors. That study in 2018 recommended a new campus with facilities for a main headquarters building and a support building and a firing range. So on December 18th, 2018, our Fayetteville City Council approved an April 9th special election for approximately $225 million in bond referendum. I believe there were 10 items on that bond referendum. So one of the 10 items voters were asked to consider in that bond package was the approval of the planning, designing, constructing of our police facilities, specifically a police headquarters building, a support building, and also a firing range. So on April 9th, 2019, the voters went to the polls and they approved all 10 initiatives. And number 9 was the Fayetteville headquarters building initiative for $36.9 million. That also included land purchase in that, and they approved that with 71% support. So bonds for phase 1 of our bond project, which included both the police and the fire projects for the site, were issued on August 22nd, I believe, 2019, with requirements to expend 80% of those funds within 3 years. In September, City Council resolution authorized the approval of that land sale agreement with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture in the amount of approximately $2.6 million for the 11.5 acres that's located at the Dean and Porter site. The police department was scheduled to utilize 10 acres of that site, with the fire department utilizing 1.5 acres. Just as a reminder, the 10 acres for the police department site was exactly what was recommended in the police space needs study. So moving forward, on October 18th, 2019, preliminary geotechnical engineering phase 1 environmental survey was submitted to the city attorney as a condition of that purchase. And on November 19th, 2019, City Council approved the contract with Brinkley Sargent Wigington Architects for the architectural services of our police headquarters building. Moving forward to December 3rd, 2019, that's when the council approved a contract with Flintco. Flintco serves as our construction manager at risk services for our project. And finally, on our timeline, on January 16th, 2020, the land purchase for the 11.5 acres was finalized. So from November 2019 through May of this year, our architects, our engineers, city staff have been working diligently on programming, schematic design pricing. And on May 26th, a presentation of our conceptual designs of the joint police and fire department sites, along with the street and sidewalk improvements, were presented to City Council at their agenda session. Some of our council members did raise some questions and concerns after that presentation, and this project has virtually been on hold until last week, when the work group engaged in our one-on-one meetings with representatives from the Urban Land Institute. So that brings us up through the timeline. I just kind of wanted to point out real quick a couple of issues that I have been really focused on, of course, since the passage of the bond. As both the deputy chief of police and now the police chief, I've been committed to delivering this project on time and certainly within budget, while maintaining a focus on two main areas: community engagement and also safety. I want to talk a little bit about community engagement. I don't think there's a time in law enforcement, at least over the last 4 years or 5 years, and especially over the last couple of 2 or 3 months, that community engagement has not been vital for not only police departments, but for their communities that they serve. So first and foremost, I certainly think that the location of the police department has to be visible, and it has to be readily accessible to the public. The aesthetics are certainly important. I think it has to fit into the neighborhood the best way it can. And I certainly think the lobby of a police department must be welcoming. It's got to be inviting environment, and we certainly need our community not only to feel safe, but to be safe and comfortable to engage with officers and the department. So I feel strongly our lobby must also have a safe place that can be used for our community in case of an emergency. A lot of times, we have people that respond to the police department. They may have a stalker that's following them. So they need to come here. They need to be able to access the police department and be able to get in there and secure themselves into a safe place. I've been advocating for a community room with this new police headquarters building. I think that's important. It's going to help our community policing efforts work better. I think it's critical to have a space to host public events and interact with not only our public, but with our youth. So we host our Youth Citizens Police Academies. We host our Citizens Police Academies. I certainly could envision civic groups, nonprofits, ward meetings occurring in this community room. And I think the options are unlimited. So certainly, I think a new police department has to be a one-stop shopping concept for all police services, and we need to be efficient. And this efficiency would include easy pickup of property and a booking and release area to provide an alternative to incarceration. So those are some of my visions as it relates to community engagement. I just kind of want to move on to the last thing that I want to talk about is safety. And so with the recent attacks that not only have harmed but killed police officers at their own police facilities, staff and community safety is certainly of paramount importance to me. So I feel our site plan must have sufficient building setbacks from roadway and public parking. I think setback is a great security feature when land is available. We must have a secure perimeter boundary to protect the building and our assets. If we can't protect ourselves, we certainly can't protect the community. This includes a safe employee parking area to conduct the daily business that we do. It's important also to have multiple points of ingress and egress, not only for the police department, but the fire department. Certainly, if we can't get out of our site due to a natural disaster or some type of accident that occurs outside of our facility, we're not going to be any help to our community. So I certainly think that we must have proper security separations between the operational areas and the public, clearly marked parking for the public, and an easily identifiable and accessible public interest is certainly important. And I think we've learned from our past mistakes of being in this building since 1993. So we must implement also, I think, crime prevention through environmental design principles where possible to also ensure our facilities are well protected. Just to kind of summarize everything in a nutshell, I feel strongly that simply what we need, and say simply, it's not as simple as I'm saying, a visitor-friendly design that certainly incorporates safety. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Amy. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I believe that we're working to get the full picture so that we have all of the information on the front end so that we can go into the deeper work of what we're doing today. So we're going to move on to Hal, architect on the project, and ask him to give us an overview from the architectural perspective.
Can we share our screen? Is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Hal Sargent once again, and Antoine Dahan is here. He's the project designer. And we appreciate very much the opportunity to be in forums like this because we always enjoy talking about our design process. But I have the problem with architects is they always tend to want to speak keep talking about their buildings for a significant amount of time, so we'll try to really run through this quickly.
Video.
As soon as we get this.
Okay, you want to watch the video first?
We thought we'd start with the site itself. This is the site. You're on the west property line. Now you're looking south and you're moving towards looking east on the site. Obviously, we don't get an awful lot of clean, open sites like this, so it's really a pleasant opportunity for us. You can see the interstate directly below us. And so you're looking due north pretty much at this point. So I thought I'd start by just going through, we've gone through about 2 months of just conceptual before we got into schematic design. And during the conceptual part of the site, a part of the process, we did all kinds of diagrams, all basically endless what if possibilities of how the building could be put together, both internally and how the site could be used. We wanted to show you this slide only because obviously we've got Porter and Dean, our two main roads here. So obviously with this site, we have a public side of the site on the west and the south, and then a more secure side of the site on the north and east. As you can see, all these little tabs here are all the topos, 1 foot fall. So what we really have is an interesting site in that we have a very flat section on the north, and then it falls pretty steeply, 3 to 4%, all the way to the southeast corner. And so that's a big factor when we're dealing with the project. And so this is where our current site plan. So when we were going through these conceptual studies with everybody, we had significant numbers of meetings, and basically our purpose in that process was to show possibilities. Once again, both in stacking of how the building can work, how the site can be utilized. But our goal when we're doing those concept studies is to come up with what we call design premises. So we know at some point we know, okay, these are the important things about this project that will lead us into schematic design. And so as we started looking at the first thing that we have is a LEED Silver. The project is a LEED Silver. And that automatically means that we have to meet certain requirements of LEED to get the silver certification process. So what we found is that one of the most challenging in a building of this nature, because it has a great many kinds of spaces and sizes of spaces. It's not, say, like a library that's an more open kind of thing. There's a lot of labs, evidence rooms, things like that. And hitting the natural light requirements of LEED is very difficult. There's a high percentage of the spaces that have to experience natural light. So what that means, and we've done an awful lot of them, of the LEED buildings, is that we really have to keep somewhere around 80-foot depth or less to be able to get light penetration into the building. So that was one of our first premises. And the other is that when you're doing a building in your particular part of the country, it's very important to try to expose as much of the face of the building to the north and the south as possible. Those are the two orientations that we have the easiest way to shade our glass to keep our energy costs down. As we move to the west, though, that's our difficult side of any site, especially as you move to the northwest. And the reason is because the sun angle gets lower and lower and penetrates further and further into the building and becomes more difficult to shade. So anything on the west side of the site, any exposure like that is going to take significant shading, usually either repetitive horizontal shading devices or repetitive vertical. Actually, vertical shading devices work better. Or you can just have a continuous, some kind of a screen. So the obvious problem with that is, of course, that's more money than a simple cantilever on the southern exposure. So that was a premise. In the building program, we studied, and every department has different ways they want to operate. But the one thing that we had right off the bat is that we have certain functions that require on-grade access. And that became a kind of a driving force in the design of the building, because those functions are the holding area and associated sally port, evidence, exercise area, because they wanted to have exterior exercise associated with their interior workout area, and the firing range because of its inherent lead, getting lead in and out and keeping the area clean and everything. So those were on-grade needs. The other was that when we talked about how this whole site could work, it became quite apparent that the police department, to work the way they wanted it to work, it became a two-story building. We studied three-story. Obviously, one story has significant problems, either in use of land, causing more problems in terms of tightness of the site. So it became a two-story building. And the other thing that was important to the police department was that the patrol department be at on grade, because they wanted to be immediately adjacent to the holding, evidence, locker, and training areas. So that basically created a building that had a very unusual, very high demand for on-site access all around the building. We needed to have all four sides have equal access. The north and the south access for and east, well, north and south for access for police building functions, the east for mechanical access, and then it became apparent that the west access point would be the public side of the building, and so that had to be an open, easy to access point for the public to the community room area and a lobby. The other thing we did is we studied what happens with this building if we go north-south. Obviously, we knew we were going to inherently have costs associated with the LEED requirements on shading the building to the west. But the real problem was the fall is so significant that every time we tried to study use of a north-south orientation, we could not get the necessary access points. It always was a constant in the design process. So the next premise that we talked about, which the chief touched on, was security. And security on a police building tends to be one of the most difficult complex issues. One of the main reasons it's such an important issue is because it's a 24-hour use building. And we have a combination of LEED requirements, which requires a lot of light, natural light into the building, and a 24-hour building, which means that at night, especially CID and criminal investigations and the patrol functions will be exposed to the exterior when they're working inside the building. And so it was important in the development of the project to keep the public exposure, that is the roadways and the public parking, away from those functions, which were the majority of the building. The other important factor, which the chief once again touched on, was the staff parking area. There was a premise from day one that be a shielded area, protected area. And the unusual thing about these kinds of buildings is a huge number of parking spaces that are associated with police buildings, because you not only have the staff parking, but you also have significant number of vehicles that many of the staff, like CID and patrol, are moving into city vehicles. So you've got double vehicles for some of those functions. Got a lot of specialty cars, specialty vehicles, a lot of trailers, and a lot of specialty garage type functions, which you'll see on the southern part of the site. These are what are really garage buildings for different types of vehicles. And so screening those became a really important part of the development of the site. And the other thing we talked about in great detail was this building setback. What is the relationship of the parking area to the building? The federal government went through an extensive research after the Oklahoma City bombing, and they set their buildings now are set 80 feet back. So in other words, from the point of some kind of barrier point for the vehicles to the building, they have a requirement for 80 feet. There is no standard for state municipal buildings that I'm aware of for setback requirements. But what we have seen across the country is a movement towards a 50-foot goal. Seems to be a more reasonable distance. And so that was the premise on this project, that a 50-foot dimension from the parking to the buildings was a standard. So basically, to kind of summarize all those premises, is that, I'm sorry, there's one other. The other difficulty on this project is the firing range building itself. The firing range building, you've got a requirement in the LEED to have natural light, and of course, the firing range does not have natural light. And so that's going to be a challenge to meet that requirement, which, getting light into the high percentage means we're going to have to hit almost 100% of the rest of the spaces to meet the requirement. But the firing range really obviously has its own separate mechanical requirements like that, its own complexities. But its premise issue here is the acoustical aspects of the building. One, acoustic noise from the building out to the public areas, and trying to mitigate that. And then two, noise from the building into adjacent departments within the police department. So that became a big part of the conversations, because the other part was we actually studied it as a basement component. The problem with that is the firing range is span has to be so wide that it's incredibly expensive to try to structurally span that kind of distance. So we knew that building, when we did all these studies, was probably going to be an independent building. So basically, the conclusions of all those studies showed that, one, the main building needed to be located as far to the north as possible, because this is the flat section of the site. We have access points here for Sallyport, here for evidence, staff, exercise, all our mechanical access and our staff access, and then of course access to the firing range and the support buildings. So we needed the flattest part of the site to be able to do all those points without spending a lot of money. We also came to a conclusion that we had a 2-story building, and it was very lineal, and it needed to face due north and due south. And the interesting thing here is that instead of using the property lines, we were so close We actually used, this is due north and due south. So we really have control over the sun on the major facades of the building. The firing range became an interesting component on this particular site because we wanted to isolate it, of course, but it became very interesting that we have so much fall on the site, we actually buried the firing range into the site. So that this very large, this is all firing range on the left side of this component. And so it's buried into the site. And so from the public, when you're looking across here, this will only appear as a site fence. It's about 9 feet high. That allowed us to get it isolated from everything else. Once again, it's buried in the site. It has no openings that are exposed to the public side of the residential across. And so that worked very well as a shield on the parking. And of course, then the support buildings adding to the perimeter to shield that parking. The public access point, we've moved it out to the public side of the building so that it's very easy to get in and out. Our public plaza with the lobby itself. The city was, one of their important premises was to have this building very transparent in the lobby. So, and we'll show you that in a second here. And then we've maintained a 50-foot setback, which was the real challenge, trying to maintain that 50-foot dimension all the way around the site. And then at the same time, when we studied this, we studied future growth. And the final decision was to just have this area right here for a future building, because there were so many possibilities of what it might be, which might be a purely public function, or it might be purely an internal function. So that seemed to give us the best location to solve any of those possibilities. So I want to show you just a couple of quick renderings. So this is obviously from the very northwest corner at Porter, the main public lobby. As you look into it, what you've got out in the front is a memorial area. You can see that we've got a low wall. That's our barrier, the 50-foot line. And then as we go around, this is of course a close-up. And so it's a very wide open lobby. It's 2 stories high. This looks from the street. You can see the building itself. On the right is the main entry to the building. And of course, it's a fence at this point, so that it goes into the north side of the, that's the police entrance to the north side of the building. And we'll just kind of progress down the west property, what's actually in the public parking lot. Obviously, you can see this is the lobby. Yeah, the lobby right here. This is the main entrance, and then the 2 community rooms to the right. And then this is on the staff side of the building, the main staff entry. And we've looked at many different materials, basically looking at some kind of sandstone with metal panels combination. So as we're progressing down that public parking lot to the south, this is the view when you look up towards that side. You can see this is actually the firing range. You're down at the highest, this is actually the entrance point there down at the very southwest corner. Kind of look around here to the right. So that's the main entrance, and what you're seeing is this is the upper part of the firing range, and the lower part. This is actually shielding the mechanical and of course the gate into the staff parking. And then this is looking directly up through that entrance sequence from the southwest corner of the site. And then we just progress as we go along we're now down on the intersection of Porter and Dean. Actually, we're on Dean, I guess is what it is. It's the southern part of the site looking up towards the complex. And you can see the first support building here and the second, which are vehicular garages, basically. We've taken the liberty of, this is the fire location. We've made it so you kind of invisible disappear here so you can see its location in relationship to the police facility. And then this is inside on the very northeast corner of the site. So you're behind the secure fence. This is that wall you saw at the front plaza. And we're looking up towards this, the exercise area, the communications area. This is all the evidence area, and then the sally port. And we're just continuing up so you can see the same area closer up. So that's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to review the building.
Thank you, Hal. And thank you all. I know that some of these schematics you have looked at multiple times. You may have been in the council session. I just want us all to remember that we have community members that are new to the process. We also are in a public viewing session. And on that note, I will go ahead and let you know that that's public viewing is happening. Public comment, this is being looked at more as a budget workshop, or we're handling it like a budget workshop or an agenda session. And so our public is here, and thank you and welcome. The chat is being used fabulously. Thank you all very much for that. Asking some questions, and Anthony is one of our community members, and he has already interjected a question and had a conversation with the chief about that. And so I appreciate you all for going through all of this in a very detailed fashion, the way that we are doing. Chris Brown is coming up next, and he's going to look at the transportation aspect of everything. And so, Chris, I'm going to ask you to, be as brief and succinct in the interest of time, so we can actually get 2 whole 10-minute breaks in here today. But looking at the transportation project and how that is intersecting with this, and there we go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I know this is the most exciting part of the project, the transportation. So, but I will try to be brief. I do understand that. Hal, would you mind putting back up the site plan, or whoever you had putting that back up, share your screen just to have somebody have some visual for us. So really talk about the overall project. The Porter-Dean corridor is a transportation bond project that really predated the selection of this site. It was in our plan prior to any of this, and it's a much larger project than what you see here. It really begins at I-49 and goes all the way to really 71B, hits the Razorback Greenway, connects up several points along there. So it's a very large project. It's a multimodal corridor. The goals of the project were to improve the corridor for all users. And so I believe that's what we've done. We have added bike and pedestrian facilities. The trail, bike trail is on the north side of Dean, east side of Porter Road, connects up to the Meadow Valley Trail up there on the north part of the site. And again, carries all the way to the Razorback Greenway and beyond. The sidewalk on the south side connects up many of the neighborhoods on the south side, creates connections for the transit route, which runs along Dean Street, comes up from the south along Porter, turns right on Dean. So many people use Razorback Transit in that area, and the sidewalk connects all of those bus stops in that area. So very important for all of those aspects. The other part of this corridor is that it is one of our 5 connection points to I-49. So it functions as a major east-west route for vehicular traffic. And so that was an important consideration as well. The curve there at Porter and Dean right now is really tight. So we looked at flattening that curve some to make the intersection work better, make the grading work better for transit, make the signalization work better, sight distance, all that sort of thing. A side benefit of that was moving that curve further to the north allowed some space in that southwest corner to put the detention ponds, which are required by the site, and you can see that here. That's required as part of our drainage criteria manual, so that those detention ponds are required. That allows that to all work well together. So that's really kind of it in a nutshell. I think there were some questions about whether the curvature of the road drove the site design or the other way around, and I would say it's probably neither or both, neither and both. We worked together with the site consultants, and they took this design and worked their site in. We also talked about reducing that curvature, other things, and ultimately settled on this as the preferred design. Operationally, this intersection works the best, again, just because of the predominant flow of traffic from Porter to Dean. But we have also looked at some other configurations, and those looking at the operations of those, and we can talk about how those may operate if and when it's appropriate as we go through our discussion. I think the last thing, and this is both site and transportation related, but Hal showed a little bit of the contours there, and I know it's difficult for some people to really get a feel for what those contours mean, but having a site visit is something that I would suggest, just as a way to really go out there and see how the site kind of falls to the south and west, and what the challenges are with moving buildings away from the higher side of the site. It's always doable. Anything can be done, but that is a challenge. So just something to consider as we go through our discussion. And I believe that's it for me. Amy, back to you.
Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate everyone forming their fabulous questions in the chat. We are collecting those. Right now, we want to make sure that we are getting all of the where we are right now out, because we are going to work through some of the details of what some alternatives are, addressing those specific questions that you're putting out there. So please continue to put them out there. That would be fantastic. And then we're going to go ahead and finish up with Wade. We'll have a few minutes to chat, and then we'll take a break after Wade before we come back for the discovery report. Wade is going to look at time and budget considerations for us. So if everyone will give him a few moments of your time. Wade, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Amy.
There you are. Thank you.
So yeah, as stated, my role with the city as the bond director is to ensure that this project is on time, on budget, and is of quality and value to the city. Simply stated, it's about time and money. So let's kind of review some of the time elements. One was mentioned before. We've got a deadline for the bond fund disbursements. According to bond counsel, the bond funds are to be dispersed within 3 years from the date of issuance. August of 2019 was that date, so August of 2022 is our deadline. The original project schedule was to be completed by June of 2022. So as you can see, we try to build 2 months cushion into that schedule. So as far as the design timeline review, since we've been unable to move forward with the design development of the site plan since our May 26th presentation to council, the project is currently facing a 60-day delay. Without the approved site plan building layout, we've not been able to do the soil boring to the geotech for the foundation recommendations because we need the exact building layout. The original design schedule was to be completed with design development by June 26th, but we're only just now starting that design development phase, so you can see how the delay has caused a snowball effect to our schedule. So review of the construction timeline. This project was scheduled to bid around December of this year with the startup of January 2021. this current delay will push us back somewhat. However, it may be possible that to make up some of this time by issuing an early site grading and utility package. But we do need the site plan finalized in order to do that. So in aspects to the money elements, let's talk about the budget and escalation costs. So the budget for the construction, including furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is approximately $33.5 million. According to our construction manager, escalation costs range from 3 to 5% annually. That equates to $84,000 to $140,000 per month. So you would think that the current economy would be in our favor. However, I've been informed that the Northwest Arkansas pricing is going up as other regions' prices are decreasing. The large factor in that is the new Walmart's headquarters facility. It's draining the subcontractor and materials pool. So it's the budget considerations associated with building locations. As previously mentioned, the current building layout takes advantage of the site topography. The main headquarters building is on the most level portion of the site. The firing range utilizes a slope of the site, allowing it to be partially below grade. This building type is concrete wall construction, so it lends well to being partially subgrade. It also helps with the sound containment. These factors are saving us a minimum of $500,000 for less excavation and fewer retaining walls. Also, as mentioned, the current building layout takes advantage of the solar orientation. And there are cost savings realized with the main building east-west orientation, which reduces the north-south exposure. Those savings are realized with reduced HVAC loads, reduced sunscreening devices, and window treatments, all associated to our LEED Silver goals. So I want to finish up, but I do appreciate this exercise and the entire team of helping us move forward so we can get back on track with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you very much. I do want to talk a little bit about the process that we're going through today. And I know that we had that fancy little graphic that told us what we were doing. I want to go ahead and talk a little bit more about how all of this is culminating today before we take a break. So right now we are getting a lot of information and making sure that we are all getting the same information and that we're getting it all collectively. And so that is one of the things that we're doing. And I know, again, that many of you have either been all up in this on a daily basis. Some of you have been seeing it through City Council. Some of you are viewing it from a public perspective and a community perspective. And so thank you all for the patience in that. So the next thing that we're going to do when we come back is go through the discovery report of the interviews and kind of the collective common voice and the themes that are coming up as common questions, common desires, common ways that this ideal building for the police and community can come to fruition. We will then start to, going into the dreams session, we will definitely start to unpack some of the questions that you're having about some of the details, because in the dream phase, in the ideal world that we all want to live in, we can ask those questions about what are some of the things, are there different ways to do it, what's important, what can we compromise on in order to come collectively together. The design phase in a normal world that is not COVID and we're not doing virtually on a daily basis, we would be spending all day together and going and moving through the design phase together. But the way that we're doing this is that we will start to say, okay, what is it that we need to do in order to explore some of the options and the questions and the other things a little bit more in depth, some of the questions that you're bringing up in the chat. How are we going to explore that? We will have 10 days for our council members to talk to the public, for our designers to go back to the drawing board, not back to the drawing board, but to tweak some things, and some from a budget standpoint, what are those considerations when we are putting all of that out there. And so that 10 days is really something that we might have done together, is something that we are asking to go out and do in that 10-day time frame. Then on August 3rd, we will come back and look at all of that together. Council and community, asking questions, gathering information, our designers and our staff and our team, looking at things through your lens again, and then we will go into, and then how are we going to do that to move that forward? And that is what that 10 days is very specifically for. So from a public perspective, and I know that we are getting some public hands raised, your council members are your conduit. And so that is, this is a huge information session for all of us, and for all of us to work together and move through some of this together. So I hope that that is clear. And of course, if you do have any questions the chats for the panelists, yes, panelists and attendees. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So we're going to go ahead and take a break, and then I'm going to, when we come back, we will give you some information about what it is that we discovered through your discovery interviews. I will again thank you all for your participation in all of those, and so we'll go ahead and take 10 minutes now. So please come back at 10:10. 10:11 if you are a details person, and we'll see you momentarily. Okay. Well, thank you all for your timely returns. Very much appreciated. Our fabulous little 10-minute break. Goes by fast. Make sure we've got most people back. Fantastic. Wonderful. And thank you. Okay. So I see a couple of people we still are waiting to get. Technical, Sloan, thank you for mentioning that the chat is not viewable at this point to the public, so we are working on what we can do about that. I just wanted to remind everybody that we will be capturing, saving the chat, so that is where we are on that. So just FYI, we're listening for sure. So in the discovery report, so we had, I cannot thank you all enough for everyone who was able to participate in the discovery interviews. We were able to collect representatives from everywhere, every part of the project that we could imagine. It's a vital part to any process, and it allows us to identify the common themes, the places of agreement and difference that are not always apparent until they are looked at collectively. And I will say this collective look is also part of what we're doing. So those of you who are able to be part of those interviews, be scheduled, spend a few moments with us, we appreciate that, because those common themes are a driving force to this process. And those places of agreement and difference being highlighted, again, being able to look at that collectively was wonderful. We literally put it into a spreadsheet and looked at and weighed all of your answers and looked at your words very, very closely. This also helps us begin to understand some of the underlying principles or values that are held, and those are a solid foundation to build upon toward a project purpose statement, which will be one of the next things that we do. Again, this is about an inclusive process and a collective process and a collective voice. So Jen, are we on? Can we move on to the next slide, please? The parts of the discovery report, the discovery process, are we asked each participant 5 questions. They are standardized questions that help us reveal themes. The common themes are a culmination of things verbalized and underlying themes. And ultimately, the project and the words that you were giving us are going to work toward our purpose and our principles. We can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. The 5 questions were these. What do you see as the purpose or mission of the building? Why is the building important to you, the citizens, and the broader community? Do you see design challenges for the building, and if so, what are they? What would this project look like if you had everything you wanted and needed? And who else needs to be involved? Design, discovery is designed, these questions are designed to be an objective series of questions. They are asked in the same way to the people who, to represent as many facets of the project as possible. Representatives from city and police staff and design and engineering were interviewed, and all city council members were invited, and representatives of the community. Through the process, a key question was who else needs to be involved, and we listened very carefully to that question, and to the best of our ability in the time that we had, we also invited representatives who lived and worked in the neighborhood and community, and we ended up with, and who is here today, we ended up with Asbel Elementary, Lifestyles, and University of Arkansas Student Council. We learned so much, and it gave us a strong place to start. So Janelle, I am going to ask you, Janelle and I were primary interviewers. Ryan was also present, and all of the interviews were wonderful. I'm going to ask Janelle if you will go ahead and give an overview of the common themes that we found through the course of the interviews.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. It was really a pleasure to speak with everyone in these interviews. And I think the thing that I will lift up is that we really are very much on the same page on a lot of these issues. And these were the things that came up that we thought were the most commonly brought up. And we've grouped those into 3 categories based on what came up the most and the most relevant conversations that kept coming up in our interviews. So we've got design, which encompassed the function. Obviously, the building will have multiple purposes. That also included location, landscape, walkability, and topography. Many of those things we've seen or heard today. We talked about when we had the overview of the timeline and the project. A lot of those things will work through in the upcoming exercises in terms of what those specifications will be. So there will be opportunity to place those things that have already been brought up into these common themes and work through them. Community obviously was very important as the purpose of the building is to serve the community and be used by the community at the same time. So we're deeply into programmatic community engagement was something that the police department already has on their list of things to do and is incorporating into the design of the building. It's also something that we saw brought up from several city council members and people who live in the neighborhood. So this is something that is going to be used a lot by everyone. Social services came up, especially as Amy mentioned, people that and organizations that we need to reach out to and should be and could be involved in the use of the building, as it being a safe place. That came up a lot as well. A safe place for the police officers, but also for people to come and do business, for people to come in when they're in the middle of a crisis and feel safe to do that as well. And the access comes up when we think through transportation. We've talked a little bit about the intersection, and so the physical access to the building, but also is it accessible? Is it welcoming to the neighborhood? Do people feel like they can access it? Do they have that perception? As well as, are they actually able to physically access it from where they are? Neighborhood and community were very similar, but we pulled it out as its own separate entity. So safety, again, comes up, traffic, approachability, and programs. So a lot of those things will be encompassed together, but those were the three themes that we saw keep coming up, and the ones that we're going to work through today. There were a strong relationship to congestion and walkability in the neighborhood. Traffic came up with relationship to design. So we'll see crossing over as we work through these themes, but this is what we saw come up. Yeah. And we'll give you an opportunity too for you to add anything if you believe there's something that we need that isn't here that you heard that we need to see.
Absolutely. We can go on to the next slide. Jen, as Janelle already went through some of these, we just kind of went through and added some sentences to those words to kind of explain them a little bit. It was generally agreed upon that the existing police building was inadequate to meet the existing needs of the police force, and the quality recruiting is impaired by the current challenges. Many of the desired functions of the building by citizens are reflected in the next theme as well, which is community. So looking at those, again, as Janelle already mentioned, a lot of these are in all of the themes that we are talking about. One interesting one is topography. We use that word because it came up multiple times, and talking about the economic standards, the development standards, while trying to match budget and the need for an inviting natural landscape while meeting the environmental needs. Parking and walkability also came up, while they also came up in some of the other areas. If you want to go on to the next slide, we did the same with community. Continued community outreach efforts and desire for some of those. Again, Janelle went over these. This is just a visual reinforcement of the things that she's already said. For the community at large, there was acknowledgement of the efforts of the police to be where they have been and been asked to participate in schools and other community programs to build relationship. And there was interest in some of those being housed at the headquarters. Additionally, having spaces of comfort and support for those seeking services and partnering to provide social services also came up as being very important. And finally, in neighborhood, again, just putting sentences to the words that, visual sentences to the words that Janelle has already gone through. It is, as a densely populated area of mixed use, low income and student housing, the topic of neighborhood became a theme to be considered on its own. The intersection of Dean and Porter, again, this is where we put traffic because the citizens that live there and people that are familiar and working in the area definitely had that as part of some of the things that they were considering. Police presence in proximity was viewed as a positive opportunity to grow a strong relationship with the neighborhood. And the presence of the headquarters in the neighborhood increased the need for an approachable design and access to the building. So again, talking about ways that people get there, public transportation, walking, also just being in the neighborhood and using the trail system was definitely of importance. So this was our favorite question. Our favorite question was who else needs to be involved, and we were able to take some time and add on interviews and bring in some of the people that we have here today. But we wanted to give you a visual of some of the other organizations and people that would like to be engaged in with the police headquarters and the way that it functions, and some of the things that the partnerships that can be forged. And the police are already doing a lot of partnerships with these organizations. These were simply the names that that came up when we asked who else could and needed to be involved. So we're really hoping that everyone is seeing themselves in this reflected. So if you were part of an interview, hopefully you see what you brought up as reflected. If you'll go ahead and go on to the word cloud slide. I don't know if anybody else geeks out on word clouds, but I love it. It's not as good as a spreadsheet, but it's really close. We did put everything into spreadsheets. We did look at the questions side by side by side. We navigated your answers, and these were, when we look at words, and words matter. Words are very important. They are hugely reflective. As you had hopefully comfortable conversations with us, and you shared with us what things were important, what questions you had, what concerns you had, and where you would like this project to go. These are the words that came up over and over again. And I'm going to reiterate who we had. This is from city staff and police and the community, and all the way to the designers themselves. These are the words that collectively we came up with. And I think that the undercurrents that we mentioned, so as all of these themes are going through, the undercurrents revealed through the interviews, we recognize that they are included in the solution. Some of the undercurrents were the unrest here nationally and about the relationships between the police and Black citizens. Obviously, the murder of Officer Carr on police property was an undercurrent, and communication inclusion in the design process. And what part of this entire process that we're doing is that communication inclusion, making sure we're getting all of the existing information and options out on the table, and making sure that those are included. This is a solution-focused process, and you all gave us some amazing solutions. And here, the interviews revealed that all of these undercurrents and concerns are or can be addressed through the solutions that we're working through today. This is by no means everything that was expressed, but it is a solid place for us to start. And we hope that you saw yourself in some of the themes, whether or not you were part of the interview, and that these words are collectively reflecting some of the words that you expressed, and that they are meaningful to you when you think of the police headquarters. So I'm going to pause there. And as we move into this next phase, we are going to start getting interactive. So again, I truly, truly thank you all for your patience in going through all of the details of everything that we did. These discovery interviews, again, back to our little diagram, gave us a load of information and a jump start, if you will, on our next process that Brian is going to walk us through. But I want you all to just take a moment before we get moving and we start asking you to do things, and really reflect on everything that you just heard. And really looking, actually, if you'll do me a favor, Jen, and go back to the word cloud slide. And think about what's important to you. Really jot down of everything that you heard, of the questions that you are currently asking, and the priorities that you have as a person in the community, as your role as staff or council, and your work, your friends, all of those other things. What of these things are top of mind to you? What is most important? As we're starting to move through into the purpose statement activity, purpose statements are very, very important. They are the thing that we can look to and look back to as our collective voice, and a filter that we can say, is this what we are accomplishing? And so we're going to start moving through that with you. I'm going to right now turn it over to Ryan. If you'll put it back on purpose statement, and Ryan, if you want to introduce what we'll be doing for purpose statement, that would be wonderful. Is Ryan there? Not hearing him. Oh, he'll be here in a minute. He's having some of those things. those, because technical issues happening is always going to be an option. We had him, there you are.
About now, can everybody hear me okay? I apologize for the technical difficulty. Just give me a thumbs up.
That's all right, you're good.
All right. Thank you, Amy. And really what we want to do now is we want to get you guys working. We want to get some feedback from this group and kind of hear from you on this call. And so to restate, purpose is very simply just the why something exists and does what it does. A purpose can be connected to a person, a company, a product, an organization, a family, and even a project such as this. And so for this next section of our day, we want to focus on the why of this building and the project as a whole. And so the what we build and the how we build is oftentimes easier to focus on. However, the why can speak to the reasons for a project being constructed. Often a purpose statement can highlight who is being served, what is the core function, and what is the difference or impact that can be made through the endeavor. A purpose statement for a project such as this really allows the community to have a rallying point as we take these next steps. And it's a constant and visual reminder of why we are taking these steps in building this facility and a way to maintain alignment and clarity really throughout the process. So purpose statements allow us to create that alignment and often unity by helping us focus first on the why, even before we get to the how or the what. So to that end, we really want to walk through a series of exercises with you, focused on helping you as a team identify the why or the very purpose of this particular project. So next slide, please, Jen. So to get our minds moving and get some energy here, I want to help you dream big, or we want to, as a team, help you dream big. And I'd like to ask each of you to have a pen and a paper or something to write on. Doesn't have to be big, bigger than a note card. And if you don't happen to have a pen and paper handy, you can complete this on your computer or your iPad. The one thing I will note is that we would ask that you have some sort of an editing or a markup feature on that ready for the second half of this. And so on the slide here, what we'd like for you to write is a 1 to 2 sentence story that tells us a story about what the new Fayetteville Police Department headquarters looks like when it is fully opened and when it's functioning at its best. So, think forward. Imagine that we've cut the ribbon and it's 1 to 2 years down the line. What does that look like? And there's going to be lots of different perspectives on this, but we want to hear your perspective on that. In particular, we really want to have you think about in that, who is it serving? What is it doing? Kind of the core function. And then ultimately, what is the impact or the difference that building or this project is making within the community or within the neighborhood? So take about 5 minutes. I do want to point out on the right-hand side of the screen, there's just a quick example from a charity water exercise that they had done as they were envisioning the same thing. That speaks to just a quick story of when they were at their best. And so if you would take about 5 minutes, write a 1 to 2 sentence story, talking real quick about what it looks like 1 to 2 years down the line after the ribbon has been cut on the building, who is it serving, what is it doing in the core function, and then ultimately, what's the impact or the difference that's being made to the project. Okay. We will all work independently for the next 5 minutes or so, and then I will ask a few of us to kind of share out their story. All right. So for logistics purposes, if you have completed that, if you don't mind to just give us a quick thumbs up so we know that you're completed. You have just a couple more minutes if you'd like to take a few more minutes on your story. Otherwise, if you're finished, the thumbs up would let me know that you're ready to proceed.
I think somebody could make a lot of money with some do 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 music for Zoom, or at least something.
Amy, I think you're the one who should do that. Do, do, do.
Exactly. I don't think you'd appreciate it after 5 minutes.
All right, one more minute, please, to wrap up. Okay, well, let's bring it back. I'd like to gather a couple stories. Would anybody like to volunteer?
Feel free to just unmute and we will see you light up. I see Matt.
I'll go first.
Awesome.
I have a short statement. I went through a couple, but this is the one I settled on. The new police headquarters has made people feel safe playing and socializing in their front yards across the street.
Okay, good.
I'd really go.
Hear for what I'd really like to hear is maybe, you know, maybe one story from staff or admin and one story from council and maybe one story from community members, if that's okay. I want to give everybody kind of an opportunity to weigh in. We don't have enough time for everybody to weigh in, but I would like to have representation from all the different groups that are on the call.
I heard someone start to speak up.
It was me, but I'm a council member, so I don't know if you want me to wait.
It'll be included. Anthony?
Sure. The Fayetteville Police Department headquarters is a building that is a secure location for officers to train and meet prior to serving the community each day. It is a location that is approachable to the community and offers services to reduce and eliminate societal ills.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Staff.
Staff, yes.
Right. So I'll probably just stay with kind of the same theme in my intro. The Fayetteville Police Department is a safe facility that is inclusive and welcoming to all our community. And the facility is providing essential and efficient core services.
Okay. Good. Good. Do we have maybe one or two more? We've got time for one or two more. Let's maybe
Design or engineering team. I know you're designers and engineers, not word people. I know, it's okay.
I just have one thought in it.
Yeah.
Having done these buildings for so long, when you asked this question, it was interesting because from an architect standpoint, we certainly don't have any role in defining what you think the building should be. Our role is to give you what you define as the premises and everything. And so it made me think back to on several occasions I've had this one statement said to me, and it's probably the most satisfying in my career, and that is when somebody that's part of the team that we designed the building with, they said at the grand opening, they said, you gave us the building, you gave us exactly what we asked for. That's one of the most satisfying. It's kind of funny to think that would excite an architect, but it does. And I've had that happen on many occasions. And so, like I said, our role is for you, these kinds of activities, to find what you want this building to be, to say, and our role is to fulfill those requests. Thanks.
Do we have another council member that would like to share? I have Sarah's hand up, but I just saw her first, so I don't want to be unfair. I've only got so many pages here.
Okay, thank you. I would say a welcoming and active gateway that anchors our new multimodal transportations corridor and sets the standard for resilient civic design while providing a state-of-the-art facility to improve the health, safety, and welfare of our community and help us retain top talent in our department.
All right, I guess we're just all gonna go home. Everybody done? Good? Sorry, Sarah, thank you, I appreciate it.
Amy, let's maybe do one more.
More? Okay, fantastic. Another community member maybe? We've had a couple council members.
I'll go. I've got the Fayetteville Police Department will serve the residents of the city by helping locate the services they need. They'll do this by helping people get the community programs, drug rehab, mental health counselors, or overnight shelters.
Excellent, thank you, Sloan. Can we take one more minute for one more community member? I know I'm putting you all on the spot. Jennifer, do you have anything that you want to share? Rochelle? Y'all don't have to, I'm just suggesting.
Mine's very similar to some of the other things that were done, but I can share what I have. The Fayetteville Police Headquarters would serve as a safe and secure place for development of high quality police force, community and neighborhood engagement, and foster a positive partnership.
Okay. Well, let's.
Yeah, this is me.
Oh yeah, Rochelle, please.
Yeah, I wrote the new headquarters must serve the entire community, be accessible to the public, all while making sure the safety of the officers and support staff are a priority.
Thank you guys for sharing this. It's a great exercise to hear from you how you're envisioning this. So let's take this maybe one step further. We want to drill down just a little bit further. So Jen, if you could put the slide back up, if it's not back up, to show the examples of how we're going to circle and kind of map out the story. So what we want you to do here is just real quickly, it's only going to take you just a couple minutes. We want to highlight the who in the story. So who is the building serving? So we really want you to take and circle the who. Then you would come in and you would actually draw a square around the what of the building. What is the building doing, or what is the function of that? And then we'd like for you to underline the impact or the difference that the building is making in the community. So circle the who, square the what, and then underline the impact in your statement if you don't mind. So take a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of do the same thing and have you share that back out. And when we share back out, it'd be great to hear from some different voices and kind of that similar format where we'd like to hear from staff, from the community, and then from city council as well. similar. If you don't mind to just give a quick thumbs up when you've completed the sentence mapping. Good. Amy, to confirm, are you going to capture this on Captivo? Is that correct?
I am.
So Amy is going to be capturing as these come in. We'll kind of ask you to share some of these kind of more a little bit more popcorn style. We'll have a little bit more flexibility here because it's short. You know, it's basically just words that we're sharing. Amy's going to put those on this Captivo board for us, and then so we'll do this by category. So let's just start with the who. So in your story, share who was the building serving in your story? Who was it focused on? Anybody at this point is welcome to share.
Share on out.
The community and the department.
Okay, good.
Citizens.
Community, department, citizens, good. Thank you.
People driving by, people coming to work.
Driving by, people coming to work, good. Heard that.
Neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
I just wrote the word people.
Okay, great. Just so you guys know, the Captivo has a slight delay in it. But we are capturing this behind the scenes as well. So
On the department, I actually wrote FPD.
Okay.
Had officers in the community.
Is that officers and the community? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Did we have some of our participants from the community at large get a chance to weigh in? Okay. All right, anything else under the who? And then we'll move on.
I would say police, general public, and criminal element.
What was the last one?
Criminal element.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Amy, for capturing that. Now let's look at the what. You know, what is the core function, or what is the project or the building doing at its core?
It's a gateway.
Okay.
A location to train and meet and offer services.
Location to train and meet and offer services. Okay.
I have, this is Sarah Bunch. I may not have clicked the right button here, but I have, this is a rather broad one, developing and maintaining a quality police force. So.
Okay.
So,
got that. Would you say that developing and maintaining a quality police force, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I've got state-of-the-art facilities.
Okay. All right.
Safe place.
Safe place, good. All right. I'm just going to repeat these back just to make sure that I've got clarity on those for Amy and in the group as a whole. So if I do, by chance, if I've misheard and I said it wrong, please please feel free to correct me. So let's get 2 or 3 more. Anybody else like to share the kind of the core function in your story of what the building or the project is doing?
It adapts over time. Kyle,
would you mind to repeat that one more time, please?
Adapts over time.
Okay, adapts over time. Good, maybe two more.
I wrote innovate.
Sonia, go ahead, please.
I had the word innovation.
Okay, innovate and innovation. Good.
Resilient civic design.
Resilient
is the key word there.
design. Good. Okay, great. All right, so moving on now to the impact that it's making, or the difference that it's making in the neighborhood, in the community, or in the lives of the people it's serving. So we'll just maybe call this impact/difference it makes.
Anchor for our new multimodal transportation corridor.
Okay. And Sarah, that, just to clarify, that's under the impact category.
Yeah, it's going to anchor that new corridor.
Good. Okay.
That one more time, Sarah.
Anchor for our new multimodal transportation corridor.
Let's just kind of popcorn this. We've got, 7 or 8. We'd like to hear from maybe 7 or 8 more of you. We've got time built in for this. So
provides a secure
feeling of safety.
Yep.
A feeling of safety. Good.
Provides a secure and welcoming location and reduces and eliminates societal ills.
Can you repeat that, Anthony?
We might have you repeat that one.
Provides a secure and welcoming location and reduces and eliminates societal ills.
Good. Okay.
And this is Jamie. Efficient and effective delivery of services.
I wrote, this is Sonia, transparency, community engagement. The rest have already been said, so.
Jamie, will you repeat yours, please?
Efficient and effective delivery of services.
This is Carter, a healthy place to work.
Okay, healthy place to work, good.
Attract and retain top talent for our department.
Good. Attract and retain top talent. Let's do 2 more. Anybody else would like to weigh in? I want to make sure we give everybody the opportunity to weigh in on this.
Accessibility, I found a new one that hasn't been listed, I don't think.
Please go ahead.
Is accessibility anywhere, impact accessible?
Okay, good.
And feels as if it's always been part of the neighborhood.
Good, one more.
Allows residents to find the long-term services they need.
Good. Well, good job, guys. Good job surfacing these. And so just to reframe, you guys have come a long way in just a short amount of time. And so reframing, this purpose statement is really this idea that we have a common why this building exists. And it's so very important to help create that clarity and create that rallying point for those of us that are involved in the community as this moves forward. So the work that you did here is very, very important. And I want to make sure that I leave the floor open for Amy if she had anything that she wanted to add before we go to a break.
So I just wanted to reiterate that. So the function of that, and Kyle asked a good question in the chat about some of those words and some of the things that you all expressed. And while some of this may feel touchy-feely, again, it ends up being our filter for when we are going down a track, or we want to be reminded of the purpose of the building, the big picture purpose of the building. We can always come back to this as a grounding place. I think we all probably, hopefully, have a grounding place in our own lives. It's that deep breath. It's that moment of, okay, who we're serving, what are we doing, and what impact are we having, and what are we making, and to have that around a project. Of course, you know, we individually have all kinds of, I'll stop my sharing. Individually, we all have our own values and principles that we follow, and we all have our own. And so this is looking to be reflective of what city council members, as representing the community members themselves, the police force, the city, everyone collectively coming around this. And so your words matter. And so thank you for sharing them with us. I did miss, I think, maybe one, but we have a lot of capturers happening right now. So hopefully we will have captured it. And we're trying very hard, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. I don't know if anybody else has one of these, but it buzzes at me if I'm not moving every hour. So we really were trying to make sure that you got a break every hour. So we'll go ahead and take another break now, and go ahead and give you another 10 minutes. We are at 10:57. We'll go ahead and extend this to 11:10, just to give you a couple of extra minutes, and because anybody who takes an early lunch or anything like that, we want to make sure that you're not having to eat that on camera. We'll see you very soon.
Amy, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Before we turn it off? Our team is going to be working offline to kind of take all of these words and begin to craft maybe a 40 to 50% purpose statement. And when you come back from break, we're going to ask you guys to engage with that and hopefully get us to the point where we're at about a 75% purpose statement that all of us can ultimately buy into. Consensus will be somewhat of an illusion for us, and we're not seeking consensus here. What we're ultimately seeking as a group is buy-in. And so while we don't have the time and the space today to actually wordsmith every word, we ultimately are going to kind of craft an initial purpose statement, ask you to react to that and engage with that for a short time, and then ultimately see if we can, as a group, achieve some sort of buy-in on that, and then we'll move forward. Okay?
Thank you, Ryan. All right, we'll see you at 11:10. Thank you. Thank you all for staying engaged and staying here with us as we navigate technology and this very important place and time. Jen, if you want to just put up that word cloud slide one more time, that would be great. And the one right after the break, yeah, thank you. So this is a little bit of what we did. Again, I think that the two things that we want to recognize are time and technology. Time being, we could spend all day on this. I think that the benefit that we have is one, that the project is already down the road. You all have been very well informed on where it is. Those discovery interviews, I'm going to reiterate how powerful they were. And I know that you all only had one-on-one with us, but when we started looking at everything collectively, and Janelle already alluded to this, we were just very impressed at how closely aligned everyone is, and obviously how much they love the city and the community and support of the police force. So I just want to put that out there and reiterate that, and hopefully these words are a little bit reflective of that. Ryan has walked you through what the technical part of a purpose statement is. Who is it serving? What is it doing? And what is the impact? And so we've done a little bit of brainstorming. Ryan's going to bring us back to what we went in a different room and tried to cobble together for you based on your words and your hopes for this project. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan for the reveal, and then we're going to take a few minutes and work on it together.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Just to kind of reframe, Jan, if you would forward to that next slide, while you're reviewing that, I'll share a couple of things that over the next 10 minutes or so, we'll get some feedback on this. And again, recognizing that as it stands right now, we would consider this maybe a 40 to 50%. And then our goal today is that we're not going to have every word figured out, but that we're going to have the general idea that we're working towards buy-in on this, not necessarily consensus. And just as we move forward, there's a lot of voices here. Let's respect each other and let's respect the process as much as we can. So the purpose statement that we, drawing on our experience in the interviews and the discovery process, and then just even the time that we spent with you today, we pulled all of this into a draft purpose statement. So the Fayetteville Police Department exists or is a welcoming place that exists to provide safety and security by providing inclusive access for comprehensive community engagement and resources.
It's pretty awesome. I like it. I feel like there's, you know, a little bit of, I feel like I really want to get in the state of the art part, and I don't know if that's more of like a later time, but like just the fact that FPD has access to the top in the latest technical, I don't know, that part is the only part that's missing for me, but everything else looks great.
Good. I think we'll, Sonia, as we move into the next section, I think we're going to have an opportunity to kind of talk through some of those specifications, if you will. And so we'll have an opportunity, if it doesn't, if for whatever reason it doesn't make it here, we'll definitely have a chance to kind of tease some of that out in the next section.
I wonder, there were a couple of comments about that, and yes, we will tease that out in the next section. Another word that was used a lot is future in some of the interviews and some of the other things that we talked about, and I know that what we've heard from you is considering the future of community engagement, considering the future of, you know, making sure that there's space for that, for the recruitment of top talent. All of those are future thinking kind of observations, I think, by you all. And so I'm just going to jot down future in case that comes into play. Thank you, Sonia.
And Ryan, let me jump in real quick with an observation. First, everyone, we were limited time, 10 minutes. We tried to take a stab and get some words on the page. One thing that occurs to me that I heard from you all during the previous session was the workforce itself. Obviously, the workforce that's being housed by this police facility. So, how can we be thoughtful as we go into the next session here? Be thoughtful of how we can weave the workforce itself. That's training requirements, increasing professionalism, innovation. How might you wordsmith this statement to make sure that the workforce is reflected? Thank you, Ryan, for allowing me to interrupt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sarah?
I feel like this does a great job addressing the use of the building itself, which I feel like we have consensus that the building is really heading in a great direction, but it misses the focus on good urban design principles and the larger role in shaping this neighborhood and that gateway to the community. And that seems to be a lot of the common theme in the council members' comments, that we want better urban design. And you know, I think we have a great building in the works, but how do we make a great site and a great neighborhood and a great gateway, great corridor? That I feel like is missing from this statement and needs to be added.
Okay. So Sarah, if I think back, one of the things I heard you mention was resilient.
Yes.
Resiliency. And so one idea is, we can begin to start adding some words, adjectives, resilience. So the Fayetteville Police Department is a resilient and sustainable, and welcoming place. So those are some things that we could add. We also want to make sure that we don't get it overly wordy as well. I do feel like as we move into the next section, we are going to have a chance to kind of talk through this idea of minimum and maximum specifications, min and max specs. And so we'll have an opportunity to kind of build those parameters in the next section. And so I hear you. And we're welcome to kind of play with some of those words here and add those if you'd like. However, Janelle and Amy are going to take us through an exercise to kind of talk through the min and max specs.
Right, but again, I think that's going back to the functionality of the building, and it's failing to acknowledge the larger role of the site and the urban context. And I think that has been the primary concern that I've heard from the council, is to do a better job addressing the neighborhood and the site instead of just focusing on this building.
Yeah. Okay.
So the, and I agree with the adjectives, welcoming. Is community gateway a good way to reflect that? I like your word gateway, and we've got community in some other places, but
I think that's a start, because it is a gateway to that area of the city, but this is establishing the standard of urban design that we'll see along that corridor. And, you know, if you listen to comments from Matthew Petty or Kyle Smith, you know, we keep coming back to good urban design principles in terms of engaging the street, engaging the community, being a welcoming gateway, and looking beyond the building, but actually the site and the role that this is going to play in the larger neighborhood and streetscape.
So with that being said, Sarah, what might you add or tweak in this to add that? And with that caveat being, I think what we were trying to do is the welcoming piece kind of speaks both to the infrastructure as well as the culture and the feeling within the place as well. And so I think we were trying to get at some of that with this welcoming idea, and then also with inclusive access, and then also community engagement. But love to hear from you. What might be some ways that you would tweak that or add to that?
You know, I think just talking about it's an inviting gateway to our community, an anchor for our multimodal transportation corridor. But I don't know, those are good questions to also ask some of the other council members. I know that Councilmember Petty, in talking about, you know, creating a place where the people across the street feel safe. I think that was a very good comment. So maybe some of the other council members would like to weigh in on the wording.
We had Petty had his hand raised, and so I wanted to go to Councilman Petty and give you an opportunity to offer some feedback.
Sure. So, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Councilmember Marsh, too. Briefly, I like the word anchor versus gateway because I think it's more inclusive of the functions that this campus is going to, that we hope will provide. A gateway, that's one direction or one dimension, but we expect that we hope that this campus will be welcoming from every direction. And that was my comment, was this statement and our discussion so far seems to presume, for better and worse, that all we're talking about is the police department. But in fact, we aren't. And I can appreciate that that's been the primary context for the discussion so far. With eyes to the future, I think it's important that whatever purpose statement we end up with acknowledges that the fire department is also on this campus, that we have future uses and spaces that have been reserved for future uses that are at this time unknown. And that some of those unknown uses, as presented by the community and by the council, may not have anything to do with public safety as it has been conventionally defined in the past. So I would be very interested in seeing a purpose statement where the subject of the statement isn't limited to the police department and that focuses on the campus itself, the entire site, not just this function that has dominated our discussion so far. That in no way do I mean to suggest that the police department and the functions of the police department are not central and critical to the discussion. They absolutely are. But when we talk about this project, I think it's really important that we know from day one, from today, that we have buy-in to consider all of the functions on the site, and that we are looking at the total impacts of the campus.
Okay, that's a great that's a great add, Councilman Petty. In thinking about this in a more holistic, broader approach, I think is good, because there are going to be, as we understand it, broader functions in other services that are offered here. So let's have an opportunity to hear from any of our community members or at large. We are running a little bit shorter on time, but we want to make sure that we give everybody, not everybody, but at least the major groups, the opportunity to weigh in. Is there any thoughts on this particular purpose statement, in particular from our at-large community members?
I can't remember exactly who it was that mentioned the future, but as Chief Reynolds mentioned, with the death of George Floyd, there's been a lot of conversation with how policing changes in the future. So we talk about having a best in class and recruiting talent from a police force standpoint, but in the mission statement, I'd like to see some dialogue or some comments that address focusing on society's problems outside of fighting crime on that campus to make it more holistic in what the future of policing could look like, either in 2 years or in 20 years.
Okay, so future is definitely important. We're on the side drafting some of these things, so we're taking it all in. Keep commenting. I think I see.
Sorry, Amy. I will add to that. A lot of what we're talking about right now, I know Ryan has hinted at that. A lot of what is coming up in these conversations is going to come up in our next exercise too. So we really need to think about this statement as what do we want to test everything against? Right, when we go through the list of what are the minimum specifications, and we are talking about right now, I think, the design of the building for the purposes of this conversation so that we can move forward through those deadlines. That does not mean that other conversations won't continue into the future about the use of the building and how it engages with the community. But this statement that you're drafting right now should be focused in on what is the state, what is the absolute mission, what are we promising the community that we're going to do, that one thing that's going to be that we're going to test everything else against. So you will have space within that to include everything you're talking about with regard to the community being engaged and how that building is going to be used into the future.
Thank you for that clarification, Janelle. Good. We had 2 hands raised. We had not had a chance to hear from Chief Reynolds yet. I want to have an opportunity to hear from Chief Reynolds.
And Kyle.
Weigh in. I know Jen is crafting an additional kind of an option too behind the scenes, and we'll show that momentarily. So, Chief.
Thank you, Ryan, so much. I really appreciate what Councilmember Petty had to offer there. It made me think about the entire campus, and I do appreciate that, because one thing that I was careful about was making sure that we had a space for future expansion. And what that future expansion is, who knows? It could be fire services, it could be police department services, but it could also be social services. So maybe adding something along the lines of providing core public safety and social services. That may not be the right wording, but just trying to craft something that's more encompassing of what the entire campus is about. So thank you for that.
Okay. Good. Okay. We'll give we are running very short on time. We want to give the opportunity for the slide to come back up so that we can review that, and we'll do our best to come to some sort of a buy-in on that. Kyle?
Can I make?
Oh yes, please, Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you. Not to nitpick the language, but I think it is important how we frame the conversation. FPD is not a place. FPD is 150 hardworking people that operate through the whole city. So if we can rephrase that to address the campus, I think it'll keep us on the topic here, but that other conversation is an important one that needs to happen. To Sarah's point, you were asking about potential language, and at the very end of the statement that was up there, it's gone now, talked about kind of vaguely as a tack on at the end, providing resources, but I would like for the campus to be an integrated resource that that serves the community in that capacity itself, as well as making additional resources available and providing access to them. And that idea of integration, and Sarah's got a comment in the chat that I think does a great job of summing up the goals of those resources.
Thank you. And we're watching that chat and getting that. Go ahead and leave it up, and we can live do it.
Yeah. So we've started with the green square, and then we've kind of heard some of the feedback, and this has morphed and changed and shifted based on the feedback. In the spirit of time, not trying to quell conversation or input, but just in the spirit of time and keeping us moving forward, do we have at least a general buy-in on a 70 to 75% on this purpose statement to move forward with? Are there any major showstoppers that we need to know about? And if so, let's address those now. But otherwise, in the spirit of time, to move us on to this next section, we all feel like we can at least buy in with this and know that there's going to be some tweaking to get it to 100%.
Ryan, if you don't mind, I'm going to read it out loud just for everybody. I don't know about everybody else, but sometimes reading and hearing have different effects. The city services campus is a resilient, welcoming, and sustainable anchor where officers provide safety, security, and inclusive access to comprehensive community engagement and resources now and into the future. Totally a mouthful. If anybody is a wordy person, obviously we are trying to get everything in there. I think some of the things that are very likable are the city services campus, adding future. One thing I might think of is in addition to offering, the providing of safety is all encompassing, not only the officers providing safety, but the campus itself providing it. But that's kind of where we are at the moment. Who is Wade? Thank you.
Yeah, I guess in today's terms, the resilient and sustainable are often interchangeable. So you might take the sustainable out, and I think everybody knows that resilient is sustainable.
Okay. Okay. Resilient, welcoming, anchor. And Sonia, you're mentioning that police being part of where they are being housed and trained and having access to do their best work is also part of this. Again, to Ryan's point about there are a lot of words create worlds, and so we want to make sure that this is creating a good picture of that. So we can definitely continue to work on that. Sustainable. Oh, and Teresa's mentioning, yes, I see Sarah's got her hand raised, and Teresa's mentioning that sustainable would be a good thing to keep.
So I think at this point, again, if there are any major showstoppers, let us know. I think for the spirit of us moving forward and moving this conversation forward, we could spend 6 hours wordsmithing. Words do matter, and we want to acknowledge that, but we could also spend 6 hours with 25 people on this, interchanging words back and forth. But the goal from the beginning was to have buy-in, and I feel like for the most part, as I look around, we have buy-in, and we've given people the opportunity to weigh in. So Amy, would you feel comfortable? Wes, Janelle, our team, we feel comfortable moving this to the next phase?
I'm
Ryan,
taking notes on
I
a
think
few
right
things.
now,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, Ryan, I think that right now the purpose statement still needs some refinement based on the feedback that we're getting. We will continue to refine the purpose statement, but I think for the sake of moving on, we understand the spirit and intent of the feedback that we've received, and we can acknowledge that spirit and intent as the guiding light for Janelle's portion of MinSpec's conversation. But I think we really are getting pressed for time and need to move into MinSpecs right now while we continue
Thank
to
you
refine
all
the background.
yeah, and thank you all for continuing to, Kyle's proposing something, Chief Reynolds has put some out there, and so we're continuing to work on that behind the scenes as, and probably most importantly, asking Janelle how some of this will work for moving forward into the specifications.
Yeah, I'm thrilled by this, what's going on right now, because this purpose statement is actually really important to move into the next exercise. And I do want to offer, I mean, I haven't asked you guys or talked about that behind the scenes yet, but I would like to offer up Kyle's statement. I think it might encompass everything that we are talking about right now as the next, for the next step. If that's okay with everybody, I'll read it out loud. And Jen, if you will try to take this down. I'm not saying we need to change what we have, but I do think we should offer it with consideration to the next exercise. The public safety campus is a welcoming city resource, an integrated neighborhood anchor where officers work to advance the health, safety, and welfare of our community now and into the future, and engage the community with inclusive support.
Well, spoken like a teacher.
Well said.
He was like, I know how to do this.
And Jamie Fields put in the safety of the officers. That has to be in this purpose statement so that we can move into the minimum specifications as well. So I just wanted to, I think that statement has everything everybody has mentioned. And if everybody does, I think we might be able to use that one. Unless someone
in the process of getting it up there, if everyone should be able to see it in the notes, so it's not required in our slides. Any other feedback on that?
Yeah, we've got a few comments coming in, adding to that we will behind the scenes while you guys are working on MinSpecs. We'll
comment.
Community
and police
So
officers.
I'll start describing MinSpecs to you guys so we know what the next exercise is, and when it comes time to pop that up, we will. There's a quote. I know that Jen is using the slides right now. She's adding one in, so it will come up, but I'll read it to you right now. A designer knows perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing more that can be taken away. So the next exercise is going to make it possible for us to move towards that stated purpose that we just came up with. We're going to specify 3 to 5 simple rules, and we'll call those the minimum specifications. These things must absolutely be respected in the design of the building. And respecting these will ensure that innovations will be both purposeful and responsible. So we like to think of these like the 10 Commandments, that they are enabling constraints such that they allow you to be innovative and add things to them, but they detail only the must-dos and the must-not-dos. That allows us to eliminate the clutter of the non-essentials that we have with the maximum specifications. So when we first started talking today, there were a lot of specifications laid out. I'm gonna throw some of those out there just in the interest of time, because some of them are very some of them are hard deadlines. And so I'll throw those out and then we can add things to them as we go along. But what will happen after we have a list of specifications that we feel like must be included in the design of this building, we're going to test each one of those against that purpose statement. And if there is a positive answer to the question, can we achieve our purpose if this specification is taken away? If we don't do that, can we still achieve our purpose? If the answer to that question is yes, then we will remove that specification until we end up with 3 to 5. So it's not an easy exercise, but I'll throw out right now some of the specifications that I heard in the beginning, and then ask for you to throw out the ones that you have. I know I heard that there was a bond disbursement deadline of August 2022. So all the money that is going to be spent on this will need to be spent at that time, but before that date. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The typography is a specification that there's a $33.5 million budget. I guess that is a specification. And that adding anything to that budget would require other conversations. That's the amount of the budget that's been funded and voted on. We have environmental goals, LEED Silver certification is a specification that we talked a lot about earlier. The safety of the officers was a specification. Expansion for public and internal use. And then I will throw out, and I will invite you all to engage and let me know what specifications do you think must be respected in the design of the building. And again, same type of, we'd like to hear from someone in each of our categories here. So if we want to start with the City Council, if anyone from the council wants to throw out a specification.
Alignment with the goals of the comprehensive plan that's been adopted by the City Council.
Great. Do we have a community member that wants to throw one out? Or a staff member?
So Janelle, I'm going ahead and capturing this so you guide me. I did start this in the middle of it. I heard time, budget, safety. I heard Councilman Petty was comprehensive plan. I just called it comp plan. That could be translated into computer plan. I don't know, just kidding. But everybody knows what we're talking about. What else?
And if you want to, if it helps to think of these within the themes, again, Jen is still working in the slide, but the design includes the function, the location, the landscape, walkability, topography, any specifications about that. Community would involve engagement, social services, safe place, access. Neighborhood was the next themes, safety, traffic, approachability, programs.
Yep, I think from the must-have, I know Chief Reynolds mentioned the community services room or a community relations room. That would be a must-have in my mind, so that might go under neighborhood and community.
Okay.
I think we've covered accessibility and the design function already pretty well from a transportation standpoint. My one concern I have from transportation is, what has the architecture team and the city discovered as far as flooding in that area?
So if I were to turn that into a specification, it would be that, again, the typography of the area needs to be respected such that we don't create environmental issues in the future. And some of the stuff that you guys were talking about during the purpose statement is what can go here. So if you had a specification with regard to the intersection or the traffic or the approachability, I think I heard in one of the interviews, someone said, I think that we want to make sure it doesn't look like Guantanamo Bay. So any of those types of statements Someone asked a question about the firing range earlier. So those kinds of things would go here. We want to test them against the purpose statement.
So I have a comment. I think respecting that 50-foot distance that was brought up by the architect is really important. And then also the sound dampening of the neighborhood with the firing range being right there. I think those are two components that we need to ensure are included in the design.
Okay, and I think Amy got that. I just noticed y'all are raising your hands. You can absolutely do that. Chief Reynolds has his hand up, and so does Teresa Turk, but just know you can also call out. Chief Reynolds, would you like to share with us what you...
Janelle, thank you so much. I just wanted to mention future expansion. It's important. I think we found ourselves in a position here where in 93 we constructed this facility, and it did last us for 27 years now, but I don't want to find ourselves in that same position where we move into this facility and it only lasts us for 20 years. So I don't want to give up future expansion.
Teresa?
I already jumped ahead and commented, so thank you.
Sorry. Chris?
Teresa,
Yes,
I'm
thank
not
you.
seeing your comment.
I think so far the design team is really focused on the function as far as the site design. So all of these things related to function. The comments that we heard from council members, transportation committee has been more about form, including the urban form, as Sarah mentioned, which I think is an important consideration. And that's really kind of been the rub. So really, I think that the minimum specifications around form versus function and the trade-offs related to those really need to be discussed, and everybody understand what those trade-offs are as we go through this process.
That reminds me, and I'll just add here, the next part of this, we have time, we're getting short on it, would be for Wes to take you through an exercise. Well, you'll define what your next steps are, what your assignments are when you leave. And that sounds like that might be a place for that, where you have a conversation about form against function. So I think a specification would be it needs to have the form that's in the comprehensive plan that supports all community efforts, but also needs to be functional.
I strongly disagree with the 50-foot buffer and calling that out. I think that there are other ways we could provide safety and security for this facility, rather that could be integrated stormwater management, kind of in a moat system or swale between the street and the building. But I think instead of putting 50-foot buffer, just designing for safety, I think is a better way to approach that. But I would also like to see us model SEPTED principles of good environmental design for safety and getting eyes on the street.
Will you give me spelling of what you just said?
I think it's CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design.
Okay.
Was there a second part of that, Sarah?
Just replacing that 50-foot buffer with just adequate safety. Because I don't believe that's required for the buffer, but we could do that in other ways.
So as it is currently part of the design, I'm going to suggest we leave it in there and we'll test it against the purpose statement and see if we'll leave both of them in there, what you've suggested and also what is currently in the design, just to test it against the purpose statement and see what we end up with. Does that work?
I mean, that's a huge reason why I don't support the current design, is because it is separated from the street and doesn't have the eyes on the street, that connectivity with the street. You know, we've got a big blank wall facing the street. And if you look at the entry sequence in the design set, it's terrible. It's not inviting. It's a blank wall. And I think we need to do better and look at other ways to provide that safety and security that we absolutely have to have, but in a way that is more inviting and welcoming to the public and supports the safety along that multimodal transportation corridor.
Absolutely. I think when we ask the question, is it necessary? Can we take that? Can we take out, I think what we're saying is we could take out the 50-foot setback and still achieve our purpose.
Yes, yes. I agree with the purpose that we're trying to achieve, just not the specific mechanism that we've identified here.
Right. So that's a great way to transition. And let's go ahead and just move into those. Unless anybody has any other specifications. Amy, if you would add.
Yeah, I think Kyle mentioned something, but yes, tell me what to add.
Welcoming and that it's welcoming and approachable. I heard Sarah say that as well. And did you say somebody else had a comment?
Yes, I agree 100% with what Sarah was saying about defining the purpose as the design criteria and not the strategy for achieving it. And she added in the welcoming facade that I was going to include. But I want to add to the chief's expandability that the existing part of or the original part of the building is also flexible for repurposing, so that in addition to the option to just add more structure, we have flexibility in the future for changing needs. And you mentioned in your introduction, the street configuration in that intersection, and we've yet to see an alternative to the curve in a drawn form. And I'm not sure, similar to not wanting to include a 50-foot barrier as a specific strategy for achieving the design, I'm not sure that I want to dictate the intersection design here at this stage, but some way that we can include language in here that it at least gets explored in the design process, I think is going to be critical to know that we've maximized our utility there.
We want to ensure that this building provides a safe and logical intersection for transportation. That the safety and the function of that intersection is considered in the design.
Yes, and also that consideration goes beyond the footprint boundary of this project, but to look at how it impacts the entire traffic network from the surrounding blocks.
The design has to consider the traffic network and not just its particular area.
I think we might word that, we could say it advances our active transportation goals, our comprehensive transportation goals, which we've already adopted as a city. And then I would like to also address resiliency, because this is a building that needs to function through natural disasters, through civil unrest, and through a variety of adverse circumstances. And we need to make sure that it is truly a resilient facility that can withstand those type of challenges.
Can I ask, Sarah, is that specifically in the comp plan, or is that outside of that?
Which one, the transportation or the resiliency?
The resiliency.
I don't believe that's in our comp plan specifically. I'm just thinking about if we've got power outages, if we have tornadoes, currently we have a virus that requires a lot more fresh air exchanges in a building. Are these windows operable? They need to be. Solar or renewable energy or some sort of energy independence, I think we need to be thinking along those lines.
I want to make sure that we get to Anthony. He's had his hand raised. He's like the kid in the classroom going, I also want to be very conscious of our time. We are still moving into a little bit of time with Wes to talk about, okay, what are we going to do over the next 10 days to explore these things that need to be explored and have the conversations that we need to have. So I think that one of the very first questions I'm going to have to ask is about time and how what hard stops people have, because of course we are happy to stay a little while longer and make sure that that some of these things get fleshed out. So maybe in the chat, just let us know if you have 10 minutes, if you have 15 minutes, any of those things, so that we can kind of gauge what kind of time we have. Anthony, would you please share?
Sure. Mine was kind of around the design, location, and officer safety. So are there enough egress points to respond to emergency situations? We do have an militia, you know, in the Harrison area. And that location at the corner of Dean and Porter, there's only 2 streets. Would it be easy for someone who had nefarious intentions to block off those streets with an 18-wheeler and then stymie the ability of the police department to perform their functions?
Did you get that, Amy?
I did. I'm trying to frame that. Anthony, if I were to put it on this board, what would that say?
So, you know, officer safety for egress. Are there enough egress points to get to be able to serve the community, or are we handcuffing them or blocking them in almost?
Is it responsive to emergency situation?
Exactly.
Okay, emergency. All right.
Or do we, you know, we're focused on protecting the officers with an offset from the street, but for situations like the Oklahoma City bombing, but we're not covering the need for making sure that we aren't containing them, or allowing them to be contained in that location.
Okay. All right.
And there's a couple in the chat.
Okay, great.
As aesthetically pleasing and sustainable, which I think we've said resilient and sustainable might be the same. Sonia, does resilient capture it for you, or do you need sustainable?
I think either one's works as long as resilient does mean, you know, considering the environment, because to me resilient kind of can also just mean that it withstands many things, but I don't know if it actually says environment, so it depends on who's reading it. Sustainability just has no question in my mind that it's about environment, and I think Bill absolutely values that.
Sarah brought up energy action plans, and I'm assuming, Sarah, that is in the context of environmental. Yeah,
that's perfect. There's already a guideline there. Advances the goals of the active transportation plan and energy action plan. I think state of the art, Sonia also had that. I'm not.
That I've heard is encompassing of resiliency. Is that still, if I'm going to try to put it under some words to kind of have some focus in that, is that it?
I mean, I think for me, state of the art means that the police has every possible resource within our budget to do the best top work that they can do. So I don't know. I feel like state of the art's more like the internal actual, you know, their ergonomic desks, their, you know, great, you know, some place to work that is conducive to them, you know, getting to the solving of crime. That's what I mean by state of the art, I guess.
Okay.
So let's think through also into community and neighborhood. Rochelle, did you have your hand up? I can't hear you. I think it doesn't say that you're muted, but maybe
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we got you.
Awesome. On the 50-foot buffer, what about on the north and the east side? I know that it's land or pasture over on that side. Are we taking into consideration what happens if that's sold up, that land is sold off? Are we still protecting the campus with a buffer on the east side of the building?
Right. So I think, you know, that might be consideration for future expansion, possibly, or considering the who owns the land, and making sure there's a partnership. Partnerships might be a minimum specification, that we must partner with other organizations, and that might include.
But despite what they're doing, if we were go ahead and incorporate in that into the original design. And then the second statement we talked briefly on the 3-story concept. Is there, for expansion, is there a way to build the frame of the building where it's 2 stories now, but we could go up if needed on expansion wise.
Yeah, and I think
And I just wanted to put it right there.
I think that's a great idea. I wonder if do you feel like that is included in as a minimum specification? Do you feel like that's included in saying that the campus needs to be flexible enough that we can expand it into the future? Or is there something?
I think that is the design part, and then the east side of the building as a must-have.
And Anthony is also asking an external view of the east side of the building, as Rochelle is mentioning. So that's backing that up. I'm going to take a pause just right now because we are at noon, and I want to make sure. I think maybe the other part of this is maybe it's a hand raise if you have to go now. So that we can understand who we still have here. Part of what we're doing now, and we're trying to understand the maximum and minimum specifications, and part of what we want to do is to go into what is it that that everybody needs to go out and do from this point forward over the next 10 days. And so, Janelle, I'm going to also just ask for you to let us know when we are at a point when we can do that. Kyle and Anthony, I'm seeing Kyle and Anthony are going to need to go here momentarily. Is that correct? No. Okay, sorry, you were asking a question. Okay.
You're up because you wanted to say something, but to your point, Amy.
Sorry, that was from earlier.
Okay, good.
I think if we can take a couple more and make sure that we have filled in each of those themes. So really, I think we have a lot of design specifications. If there are specifications for what you want this building to do or what you want this building to provide for the neighborhood or the community, then let's go ahead and specify those, see if we can get a few of those, and then we'll move right into testing them against the purpose statement. So let's just take one more minute and see if anyone has any community or neighborhood specifications.
Jennifer, I know that Asbel is in the community and you have a lot of, our neighborhood, and you have a lot of knowledge of that. What can you help us fill in the neighborhood aspect? We've mentioned traffic here.
I don't know what I have to offer in that regard, other than just, you know, one of our concerns is definitely walkability and the ability for students to walk home safely, because school bus radiuses are such that those students right around the school have to be walking students.
Okay. And I know that there was, and does approachability go into welcoming and approachability kind of I put it here in community, but that might belong in neighborhood as well?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so some of them are crossing over. We don't have to be in categories. Some of them are in a lot of different categories. Okay, and I think that we talked about the community room already.
Is there an opportunity for community engagement exterior to the building on the property, whether it's, you know, this is the mountain biking capital of the world now. Is there something that we could do from a mountain biking trail in that vicinity to draw people closer to the police station and not want them to keep their distance because it's not welcoming? Just something along those lines.
Accessibility by walking, by biking, by
accessibility and recreation or community engagement.
Just a public gathering space.
Yes.
For public gathering space.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah.
Thank you. Wes?
I think the designs we've seen included a memorial or monument area, and I think that's an appropriate way to include an outdoor facility for the neighborhood and the broader community.
And I think we have partnerships up there, and that's going to be really all encompassing too, that we must partner with community leaders, with the neighborhood, with all of the stakeholders for the department in the building. Anything else? And if not, we can move into asking the question. I have the purpose statement. Jen, would you mind putting the purpose statement back up for us one time?
Thank you, Jennifer, for that.
Take a photo of it with my phone, and then I can't find my phone now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of those, and Amy, if you'll if you'll tell us what they are, since you have them right there in front of you, and we'll start with design. I'm going to ask the question, can you still achieve your purpose without this specification?
Okay, the first under design is 50-foot barrier.
Can I?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I have the purpose statement one more time? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead and leave it up there, and I will call them out.
Okay, that's perfect. If we could just leave it there, yeah.
Yeah, Jen, go ahead and leave the purpose statement up there, and then I'll just call out on these.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first under design that we have is the 50-foot buffer, the barrier, the space.
The 50-foot barrier, and I'll read the purpose statement. The public safety campus is a welcoming city resource and integrated neighborhood anchor. The campus provides a safe place for officers working to advance the health, safety, and welfare of our community now and into the future, and will engage the community through inclusive access and support. Can you do that if you do not have a 50-foot buffer? And if you would please put your answer in the chat so that I will know if there is a positive answer, then we will take that one out. Okay. So we have a positive answer that yes, we can achieve that goal without a 50-foot barrier. So we will cross that one out. What's the next one, Amy? That's not to say that you will still be having that conversation, but we are coming up, there's room for innovation. But we are coming up right now with the 3 to 5 minimum things we have to have in order to move the design process forward.
Okay, the next one is the sound barrier for the gun range.
Can you achieve your purpose without a sound barrier? If you'll put your answer.
I think the building could potentially be moved to the east side of the property, so that question I think needs more exploration in the design, personally.
Okay, I see head nods, but we're getting that it cannot be achieved and that we should keep it.
That's
so we've got conflicting.
If you would, just use the chat function right now rather than commenting, so that we can have a very easy way to see if there are any positive answers. So if you believe that you could achieve this purpose without a sound barrier, please put that answer in there. Do you believe that you could achieve this purpose without a sound barrier?
Okay, so we have a lot of no's.
Okay.
Okay, so we have no's, and we're going to keep that one. The next one is room for future expansion or future expansion.
Can you achieve the purpose without providing space, planning around future expansion? If you'll put your answers in the chat. I'm looking for a yes to know whether or not we should take it out.
Okay.
Okay. Resoundingly no. Okay.
It's about accomplishing the goal is meeting the specs of the comprehensive plan.
Can you achieve the purpose without meeting the comprehensive plan.
And sub bullets of this were form and function.
You'll put your answers in the chat. I'm looking for a yes to know whether we should take it out. Okay.
The next one is the fancy Sarah word acronym of CEPTD. CPTED, yes, that's right.
Is that a certain, I don't know how to ask that question because I'm not entirely sure.
Sarah, will you repeat what that stands for? Crime prevention through environmental design.
Yes.
So is that like being LEED Silver? Is that a certification, like a goal?
It's a set of standards to promote safety in communities.
Okay, so you're saying that
best practices.
The design of this building must follow those standards. Okay, can we achieve our purpose if we do not follow standards?
Okay, we have a lot of no's on that. And part of the other part of my question is some of these, and maybe you'll get to this, Janelle, is what can roll up underneath each other. So the next one is resiliency. And again, we're talking about words, and so I just want to make sure that none of them mean what others mean as well. So resiliency.
Can we achieve our purpose
if
the building is not resilient? No.
Okay. The next, we have no's on that. The next is emergency. And that was to Anthony's comment about thinking of all the scenarios and ensuring that all emergency scenarios are considered.
Can we achieve this purpose without being responsive to emergency situations?
The next is sustainable.
I kind of feel like sustainable and resilient, they're not entirely the same thing, but might be. No? Okay. Can you achieve the purpose of, can you achieve this purpose statement without sustainability? Okay, what's the next one, Amy?
Next one is future innovative. Sonia's word was state-of-the-art.
State-of-the-art. Can we achieve our purpose if we do not have a state-of-the-art? We do not have state-of-the-art technology and equipment. No.
Okay. From a community standpoint, being welcoming and approachable.
Can we achieve our purpose if the building is not welcoming and approachable? No. Okay.
Okay. Can we achieve our purpose without a community services room?
Yeah, and can we achieve the purpose if there is not a space within the headquarters for community?
Okay. Partnerships.
Can we achieve this purpose if we don't work with the other stakeholders in the community?
Okay. I like the exclamation points. It's giving us a little bit of a vibe. In the neighborhood category, traffic considerations.
I think we may have asked that already. Did we do that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So can we achieve this purpose if the traffic is not safe in the area?
And then walkability.
Can we achieve this purpose if the neighborhood, if the community and neighborhood cannot walk around the building?
Community engagement.
Can we achieve this purpose if we do not engage the community? I think that may have been the partnership one as well. But also I think this is hitting at programs designed to encourage community policing and to actually engage police officers in relationship with the community. Can we achieve our purpose without nurturing those relationships between the police and the community? Okay.
And then we have a memorial mentioned.
Can we achieve this purpose if there is not a memorial area on the campus on which the community can engage?
And then finally, we have outdoor space that was last suggested. Can we achieve the purpose without outdoor space? Also part of the community engagement piece.
Okay. Is that all of them, or is there another section?
That is all of them.
That's all of them. So how many were we able to cross out, Amy?
One.
One. Okay. So we're gonna have to do that again. When you do the test, you guys, we're gonna do it popcorn style one more time. And as we do it, I need you to read the sentence, right? And be truthful about if it could happen without it. Not if you want it. Remember that these are not the only things you get to have in the building. These are the minimum specifications that will allow you to be innovative with the building now and into the future. Let's try it one more time. We're going to go really quickly. So we just have 1 second to think about it. Pop your answers into the chat. Amy, if you could just read them out for us. We've got, which one was crossed out?
The one that was crossed out was the 50-foot barrier. And I'll reiterate in the next thing that we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be doing is taking these and figuring out how we explore those. And so if there's anything that has some options to it that are so for instance, the 50-foot barrier probably is a good example of something that wants and needs to be explored. And Matt is asking if we can remember to refer to it as the campus, public safety campus, as opposed to just the building, because that is very inclusive of the community and neighborhood and other considerations that we are going through. So yes, we will absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Sloan had to, I just want to note that Sloan did have to go. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody saw and knew that. Okay, so is there any other way to frame that, Janelle, that would be helpful?
To frame
this question about what we are going to go into next, or Wes, about what we're going to take this and do so that you all understand what nobody ever wants to give anything up. We completely understand that. And none of this is lost. Everything, all of this is captured. Nobody is saying, okay, never mind, moving on. That's not the purpose of this exercise. The purpose of this exercise is for us to take what it is that we need to do in the next 10 days, what you as city staff and designers and council members need to be doing in the next 10 days. We want to wrap up at 12:30, so that is only a few more minutes. Janelle, just in the interest of time, and Wes, I'm going to ask you, can we move forward to our design, to some action plans in our design phase for the 10-day assignments with where we are?
Yes, I definitely believe we can. Go ahead, Janelle.
Let's combine. I really think we can get down to at least 5 of these if we combine them. So there are some specifications under design that we could put together. We know sustainable, resilient, safety, and the plans that we have to follow, the standards that we have to follow. So I would say under design we have standards. Safety, resiliency, or sustainability. I'm calling that the same thing, even though there's a bit of a difference. And I think the sound barrier encompasses the approachability. So let's ask this question: Can you achieve that purpose without resiliency and sustainability? And you'll put your answers in the chat. We're just going to popcorn it as fast as we can. Okay. Can you achieve it without following the standards in the comprehensive plan, in CEPTD? Okay. Under community and neighborhood, can you achieve it without considering the traffic? Can you consider it without engaging the community? Can you consider it without, could you achieve your purpose without keeping to the time and the budget that you have? And could you achieve your purpose without attending to the topography of the area? And so I think that might be our 5. The safety of the community and of the force. Standards.
Okay. Standards.
Safety, standards. We have S's, let's say sustainability. Stakeholders. Safety, standards, stakeholders.
We have safety, standards, resiliency, sustainability, and you said stakeholders. I have partnerships, and I've combined some of the community engagement in that. If we can all agree that that is what we are talking about,
Looping both of those in. And then time, budget, typography. I think that might be it. So if we work from there, Wes, I think that what happens next, and he'll let you know, is within that, you'll figure out what your next steps are, come back with for the next session. Thank you all for going through that exercise with us twice, but I think we have some standards, some specifications that must be attended to.
Yes. And Wes, I'm asking two things under safety that were mentioned, just to kind of bring things together a little bit. And all of this is captured, I promise. Just because I'm erasing it doesn't mean it went away. All right. I'm going to stop the share.
All right, Janelle, if you'll pull by a slide deck back up and we can get to the design slide. And I'm going to go through this pretty rapidly. We had a short exercise, but we're going to forego that exercise with respect to time. I want to get you all out of here by 12:30. Really what we're talking about on this design phase is an opportunity for you all to go back to your individual corners of the world and ask the right questions, collaborate with one another and external stakeholders, and in an effort to further narrow down what you see as the solution to what we've identified as minimum specifications and other opportunities for this site. When we come back together on the afternoon of August 3rd, we're going to provide an opportunity for the input that you've gathered and the refinements that you've made as teams to inform the dialogue on meeting 2, from which we will achieve that common consensus. So when we think about design, did the min specs change from where we started? And I mean the earliest days, back to the spring. And I'm really looking at the professional designers, the architect, the engineer, and the police force. There were some initial design parameters. The question now is, from where this began several months ago to where we are right now, have the min specs changed? How have they changed? Have we identified new attributes, new functions, uses for this campus that will inform revisions? And I'm really looking at my professional designers right now. It's going to be some busy activity, likely over the next 10 or 11 days, to make some initial revisions, maybe not scaled drawings, but some initial revisions to the imagery that reflect some of the changes that we now understand over just through this single meeting right here. I encourage actually, I'm going to weave in staff here at the end. I'll weave in staff later when we get to comprehensive plan. The community, especially looking at our elected representatives, as Amy mentioned earlier in this meeting, you are the continuity to every other voice in this community, or the conduit, I'm sorry, to every other voice in this community. And so over the next 10 or 11 days, and we recognize it's rushed, but we baked in 2 weekends, maybe you could take advantage of those, but to seek guidance and input from additional stakeholders that you represent. How are you going to capture that? How are you going to reflect that input back into meeting 2? And how eventually will that influence and inform those future design changes? We can, okay, on the neighborhood. So the neighborhood really connects deeply to design. That's what I've heard expressed here today, that you see the bottom right corner on this slide. And Jen, if we can pull that slide back up, I would appreciate it. The bottom right question on this slide that I want you all to consider, that I have heard acknowledged, affirmed today, is that design does affect behavior. The design of this will affect how the behavior of police officers as they ingress and egress during times of emergency. The design will affect the behavior, the level of transparency and permeability that the public feels when they approach this with the intent to enter. How the design affects the behavior of the school kids that are walking to school. You know, we heard Jennifer say that a large population of her school down there are walkers. What does the design of the street cross section itself? You know, we've talked a lot about the T intersection versus the curved intersection, and in previous meetings we've even talked about roundabouts, but that street cross section matters to how people interact with that public space. So continue to think about how the design affects the behavior. We've identified how we want this campus to behave in many ways, and that's my word, not yours, but how it feels to be a part of this space, and what that does to people physically and emotionally, psychologically, and how they connect to it. So consider how those designs will affect and allow that to feed design professionals, city planning staff, elected officials. As you all go back to your corners, allow that question to feed some of your inquiry and guide some of your feedback for meeting 2. I want to be clear that when we talk about certain standards, codes, sometimes it's important to acknowledge that codes can be flexible, that codes themselves and certification requirements are not necessarily minimum specs. They exist in many cases, to guide design. They guide the conversation and the ultimate attributes that are built, but achieving every code or every regulation, whether it's federal, state, local policies, best management practices, or outside external certifications like U.S. Green Building Council's LEED certification or CEPTED standards, which I'm familiar with as well. These you can meet the spirit and intent of many of these guiding policies through this process and ultimately achieve the purpose statement that you have identified without necessarily meeting every policy requirement or best practice or certification requirement. So I challenge you all to think about those specifications that you've identified as desirable, and can you meet the spirit and intent in support of that purpose statement without actually achieving every individual requirement? Consider that. Crosstalk over the next 10 days, a lot of staff crosstalk, a lot of public engagement, and then design professionals as you can. This includes city design professionals and paid design professionals. If you could come back in 2 weeks with informed renderings. And I will allow you all, we're going to have to drop off here in a second, but I will allow the design professionals to consult directly with the city staff on the timing for how that works, what sort of input they're going to need to inform any new renderings. But I think having several renderings that reflect the input today will really start meeting two in the right place and allow us to begin to collaborate over options, much like we did the purpose statement, just visually. So we had a little bit of a game and a workshop associated with this section, but I'm going to get you all out of here in the coming moments. Unless there's any questions specific to the next 10 or 11 days, if you need help identifying objectives, identifying potential stakeholders, identifying staff meetings that need to happen, identifying the right questions to ask, I will stay on this call. We can do it right now.
Wes, can I go ahead and make a suggestion that I put, and I'll just share it real quick because I know we've had that other up. So I put up, you know, somewhat what Wes is saying. Okay, so council, the conversations, I know you want to have conversations and you'll have community members and the public asking you questions and engaging them. So one of the things that I think that we want to know, or that we can put out here now, or we can put in a report and have other conversations, is what do you need to do that? I know some of you have had some ideas about how you want to engage with your constituents, or other conversations, or gather information, or anything else that you want to do. What do you need? The same with the with our architects and engineers. You know, what is it that our design staff needs from all of you, or from us, in order to do that? Do you all have enough information here to move forward and do some adaptations and thoughts about some other things, that ways that some of these things can be accomplished in some renderings. And I put staff up there. I don't know if that is a, you know, there are some other things of, I know that you all are kind of the glue that holds all of this together in a lot of ways. And then obviously our Fayetteville Police Department and what they can or want to do. So I think that that's kind of what I would like to, if we can capture that at all, that would be ideal.
Super. Thank you, Amy. So does everyone feel like, from the information I just gave and my portion of it, that you understand that you can identify some tasks associated with your position here as a stakeholder, and understand maybe how you can go capture some value and come back? And let me phrase it like this: if there's anybody who doesn't feel that way, you can chat us or speak now. And I want to make sure I bring up one more thing, because I'm seeing some conversations on the chat. I want to look at Mayor Jordan here. Sir, we are fully committed to meeting the timeline that we agreed upon. But your min spec on Monday the 3rd, if it comes out, and we certainly don't need to settle this now, but if over the next 10 or 11 days of work, if it comes, if it bubbles up that more time is necessary, whether that's site visits or giving the professionals a little more time to develop some renderings, or just allowing the staff to do their work, or council members to listen, I want to encourage you to consider what it would be like to provide some flexibility on the date for the second meeting. If it came to that, we don't have to solve it right now, but that's a min spec that I think just needs to be considered as well. So it may provide a little bit more room for this work to be productive. So Okay, so is there any additional feedback right now as far as the scope of work for the next 10 or so days?
Do you need the community at large members involved?
Absolutely.
Okay,
In
'cause
meeting
I didn't
two,
see
yes,
the,
sir. Absolutely. Everybody that is here is encouraged, definitely encouraged to participate in meeting two. And meeting two
no, I'm
is
sorry, not in meeting two, but in between.
In
You had
between,
the
absolutely.
the
I think that
stakeholders didn't include us.
as you all have ideas, as you all have engaged or in all kinds of things, what are some of the things over the next 10 days? Maybe it's reaching out to your council members and asking how you can help. Maybe it's reaching out to staff or offering up anything that you have and again, we're capturing the chat and we're looking at that. Matt, do you want to share? You're mentioning something. Would you like to share that?
Sure. Thank you, Amy. I'm a little, I guess, confused and concerned about our expectations for ourselves over the next 10 days and with the timeline in general. Council didn't see any work product on this until 8 weeks ago. And now what we're talking about are not cosmetic or aesthetic changes. These are substantial modifications to the program. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, we're not going to be able to stick to the timeline that we've been discussing with respect to schematic changes. We might be able to play catch up with respect to the construction timeline, but what the council and our stakeholders on this call have discussed so far it's going to require quite a bit of work. And if we're under the impression that some additional community conversations or some more specific feedback from the council is going to be sufficient, I think it feels like we're kidding ourselves. Our consultant and maybe even another consultant who is a little more gifted with site design needs to, we said we weren't going back to the drawing board, but there's an element of that in everything that's been suggested today.
Yeah, that's great input, Alderman Petty. Thank you very much. And I want to bring it back to Mayor Jordan. If you recognizing Alderman Petty's input, let's consider the min spec of timing. So this process, these two meetings are being driven by the bond and design development timeline, and that were identified as minimum specs. So if the process for these design meetings extend, then they're going to have an impact on those minimum specs. That is way above my pay grade, Alderman Petty, and so I will defer to the mayor to provide additional input here.
Yeah, I want the council members to be agreeable to this plan. I don't want to just throw something together, because I went through this with the parking deck down in the downtown area. We brought a plan, it's not acceptable to the council, so we had to go back and redesign. And I was fine with this, but there was a significant cost to that, and I'm not going to minimize. I think Wade made it pretty clear that for every month we wait, it's $86,000. I believe correct, isn't it, Wade? So
yeah, that's correct, Mayor.
But I do agree with Councilmember Petty. I think 10 days was, I don't know if that's going to be enough time from what I've heard here. So I will sit down with finance folks and staff, and we will see what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for considering that minimum spec. I want you all to know that our team will remain flexible, and based on if additional time is provided for this process, we will gladly adjust the schedule, not only for this phase 3 design to allow each one of you the time you need to most thoroughly investigate design considerations, but also for the schedule of meeting 4 to ensure that it is fully informed to the best possible, and at the end of which we can reach a true consensus. So thank you for the input. Thank you all for that flexibility. We are 8 minutes overdue. I am very sorry. You can absolutely blame me, but the last 8 minutes has been very productive, and I'm glad we covered this ground. Unless there's any additional input right now, I just want to say thank you for the time today, for the extra time as well. It has been very meaningful. And as a Fayetteville resident myself, I'm very proud of the hard work that everyone puts into these processes. So thanks again. We will be in touch as information comes up, and you are always welcome to contact us at any time with direct questions. On behalf of our entire team, thank you very much. Wish you all a great weekend.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.